Monday, the 28th of July, 2025. And I did not do a video yesterday, but I was busy and I do like to take Sundays as a break to reflect, etc. And had a lot of, I had some guests over at different times during the day, so that was fun. And so, yeah, now back at it. I'm going to go and cover some things that I've been looking at with Grok. And again, just to show you how easily manipulated people can be if they just ask one question and don't follow up when they're using social media, when they're using Google, and especially when they're using AI platforms that were created by people like Peter Thiel from Palantir, examples of that, and Elon Musk, people that can easily be the ones pushing a lot of misinformation and propaganda and psychological operations via these platforms. And so anyway, so before I get into the Last American Vagabond, who is very interesting, I've shared his stuff over the years. I just wanted to get into some of the news from this week. And so I wanted to confirm, did the entire CDC panel just get fired at the AKIP or ASIP meeting, rather, not AKIP, and under the direction of RFK Jr. So I look at this, you see there's no date or anything that I put. I just asked if they got fired. And so as of Saturday, 26 July 2025, there's no definitive evidence from available web sources or X posts confirming that the entire CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices ASIP panel was fired during or immediately following the June 26, 2025 meeting. However, significant changes to the ASIP membership occurred earlier in June, which may be the basis for your question. Let's break it down. So, I didn't give any dates, but the June 2025 meeting context at the end of June was the first under a newly reconstituted panel after Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. fired all 17 existing members on June 9th, 2025. So you see how it's spun sometimes, and then you get a little bit of the truth, kind of buried in the middle of the information. So yes, 17 existing members on June 9th, 2025 were fired, and he appointed 8 new members. I think there's currently 7 still standing. No evidence of firings. Well, they were fired, so. Okay. So the mass firings happened earlier, June 9th, and no subsequent dismissals are confirmed as of today. Oh, yeah, this was the Japanese study that was released regarding vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And so the more doses you receive, the sooner you're likely to die. There was a lot of charts that were brought in, assessments made. And this is me trying to ask Grok. So this is the VAERS vaccine reports that were submitted just from Pfizer alone, from March of 2022. And then I also shared one from February of 2021, Pfizer VAERS vaccine adverse events reports. I've already shared that they were significantly underreported. And you could get that from FDA, CDC, I forget what study it was, but it was in Harvard, and showing that the underreporting could be as low as between 5 and 10% of the actual VAERS. And so I was giving that data for Grok to look at. Okay, so overview. The study examines excess deaths. Okay, so we're still in Japan here. Okay, so the VAERS reports from Pfizer alone showed that people got COVID, flu, etc. via inoculation. Therefore, the more people who got jabbed likely had a VAERS that they claimed was Omicron, right? And so I hope people can see that, because the periods where there were peaks in hospitalizations and stuff like that, it was during the time that people were getting, it was the flu season or COVID shot season, and so I think that could absolutely be related. And so I said this. And so no VAERS reports from Pfizer or any COVID-19 vaccine do not show that people contracted COVID, flu, or other illnesses via inoculation, i.e. directly caused by the vaccine. And then it goes on to continue the lie. And so then I gave another one of the vaccine adverse events reports literally by Pfizer. So anyways, how many of those cases were classified as COVID, flu, pneumonia? I gave the VAERS. It was thinking for a while, and then it didn't give a response, because first it had it when it was doing its thinking that it was breaking down the cases, and then it stopped. And then said the search results do not provide specific numbers for VAERS reports from Pfizer classified as COVID, flu, or pneumonia. However, from available studies and reports, giving me a lot of bullshit here. And then, so what I did was I said directly from the document I just provided you, provided that you lied about, coronavirus infections, asymptomatic. And then you've got COVID-19, infections continued. So then you get like the breakdown again of contractions and deaths. And that was just from COVID, contracting COVID via inoculation. And then it breaks it down. Yeah, so listing reported adverse events following Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccination up to the data lock date on 16 March 2022. I didn't even unpack 2021 with Grok because I thought this was definitely enough. And then I shared the H1N1 influenza and then influenza. Yeah, so from this document, 1,801 influenza-related reports, and again, under different names as well, just to make it look like where it's not a severe. And then I gave some more bacterial, pneumonia bacterial, bronchitis, infectious pleural effusion, lower respiratory tract infection, pneumonia aspiration, sputum purulent. So then it gets into the infections and fatalities. And then I just add some more directly from the document that I sent that I lied about. So again, like even with Grok, when you get them to assess document, don't think that you're getting the actual information. Read the document yourself. I know it's tedious, but if you are like someone that's sharing this stuff online, like there needs to be a little bit more verification. Literally needs to happen. Okay, so that I said there are many other VAERS in the document I showed you, and another report from February 2021. The unvaxxed did not experience these alarming numbers during that same period. And so if you look at people that were not vaccinated and you look at the cases of COVID, flu, pneumonia, blood clots, turbocancers, myocarditis, pericarditis, etc., you would see a difference. Okay. So still going into Pfizer again here. So then it goes into just giving me something on Pfizer. What did I ask it? So I said, yeah, again, assess the documents on VAERS I provided you, because again, Grok is giving me very much misinformation again. So I'm like, refer to what I gave you. Okay, so then I said, Pfizer again, I will repeat, was not the only COVID shot given. Moderna, JJ, AstraZeneca, and other COVID shots had more VAERS reported. The 2 Pfizer reports I shared is a small piece of the data collected on VAERS internationally, and until MSM and Big Pharma starts releasing the data, more people will die or suffer VAERS from these corrupted companies. Do you have access to independent studies with no conflicts of interest? Yeah, respiratory. Yeah, so disproportionate analysis of COVID-19 vaccine, AE, Springer, June 2025. Use versus VAERS data. Use US VAERS data. For Pfizer, Moderna, JJ comparing or flu vaccines found 96 AEs significantly associated with COVID vaccines. More boosts, higher reports, including respiratory, example pneumonia, 4.2 times disproportional, flu-like 3.8 times disproportional. And does everyone remember that the flu magically disappeared when COVID hit? Ridiculous. Okay, so more doses correlated with AEs, 4 times boosts, 2 times pneumonia reports. Okay, some facts baseline, similar. Okay. Okay, so Pfizer needed to be sued to provide these 2 reports. Grok, you sound like a leftist radical pushing big pharma harmful drugs on us. Do you support crimes against humanity? That's just me being dramatic. I like doing that just to see what it actually says. Okay, so then I asked though, give me 3 examples in the past 100 years where big pharma was responsible for drugs, chemicals, and bioweapons that killed innocent civilians. Okay, and so big pharma has indeed faced scrutiny for products that's caused harm, often due to inadequate testing, misleading marketing, or failure to disclose risks. Goes on from there. So it's giving me oh my goodness, sulfanilamide disaster of 1937. The Massengill company released elixirs sulfanilamide, a liquid form of antibiotic sulfanilamide dissolved in diethylene glycol, a toxic solvent. Without safety testing, it was marketed for infections but caused kidney failure. It's saying here over 100 deaths. It is significant, mostly children. Thalidomide scandal of 1957 to 1961. Grunenthal, Germany, and distributors like Richardson Merrill, U.S., marketed thalidomide, my goodness, my words, as a safe sedative for pregnant women. Despite inadequate testing, it caused severe birth defects, phocomelia. So 10 to 20,000 children affected worldwide, with high mortality. Approximately 40% died. Banned in 1961, sparked modern drug regulations. You got the Vioxx scandal, 1999-2004. Merck marketed Vioxx as a painkiller for arthritis, knowing it increased heart attack stroke risk, but downplaying it in studies, withdrawn in 2004 after FDA pressure. So here saying an estimated 27,000 to 60,000, wow, my goodness, deaths from cardiovascular events. I must have some kind of a stutter. Merck paid 4.84 billion in settlements. So then I asked, what about the gas chambers? What about chemicals sprayed on innocent civilians in Vietnam? What about AIDS or VAIDS? And so here's what Grok said. And again, I don't know if I already said this, but I can't get my friggin' video to show me, which is weird. Even yesterday I was trying to get it up and it wouldn't. But anyway, the gas chambers were a central tool in the Nazi regime's genocide during World War II, classified as crimes against humanity under international law. From 1941 to 1945, the Nazis used gas chambers in extermination camps like Auschwitz, Birkenau, Sobibor, Treblinka, and Chalmo to murder approximately 1.1 million, mostly Jews, but also Roma, disabled individuals, and political prisoners. Zyklon B, hydrogen cyanide, was the primary chemical used, released in sealed chambers and disguised as showers. So the Nuremberg trials, 1945-1946, convicted Nazi leaders for these acts of war crimes and crimes against humanity. And Operation Paperclip, a lot of these criminals went to the U.S. and started psychological operations and propaganda on the West through the U.S. So chemicals sprayed on innocent civilians. Okay, so it doesn't get into anything here. And then chemicals sprayed on innocent civilians in Vietnam, Agent Orange. My video that I shared 2 days ago, it discusses people, admitting to soldiers coming back, admitting to these chemical weapons being sprayed on innocent civilians, and so people need to relook at that. So during the Vietnam War, 1961-71, the U.S. military sprayed over 20 million gallons of herbicides, including Agent Orange, dioxin-laced defoliant, and this possibly could have happened even earlier. So even in the 1950s, not just so not just in those locations or surrounding areas. On 4.5 million acres to destroy forests and crops, exposing 4 million Vietnamese civilians and 2.8 million U.S. troops. Produced by Dow Chemical and Monsanto. So Agent Orange caused birth defects, cancer, and neurological disorders in millions, with almost 500,000 friggin' deaths. Over 400,000 deaths and 500,000 children born with defects. Absolutely disgusting. So U.S. veterans received 180 million in settlements, 1984 class action, but Vietnamese civilians have seen limited compensation. So it's going to lie to be about AIDS. Okay, so let's see where it says. But these lack evidence in pseudoscience. Yeah, Fauci is a criminal. Anyway, so Zyklon B, a pesticide containing hydrogen cyanide, was developed and sold by German chemical companies, primarily Deutsche Gesellschaft für, whatever that is, was with significant involvement from IG Farben and other firms. I've talked a lot about IG Farben, so have other people. More people should be talking about that. So Zyklon B was originally formulated in the 1920s by this company, a subsidiary of IG Farben, as a fumigant to kill pests in stored goods and buildings. Chemist Fritz Haber, known for Haber-Bosch ammonia synthesis, contributed early HCN research. Though he didn't directly develop Zyklon B, the product used a carrier, example gypsum pellets, to release HCN gas when exposed to air, patented in 1922. So it's getting into post-war accountability. And again, there was no accountability. Things rebranded, renamed, moved. And then Operation Paperclip, a lot of the people that were convicted of friggin' war crimes, scientists, engineers, brought into the U.S. to lie to us about so many different things. And then release harmful gain-of-function NBCs on us. Anyway. So I said, what is or was IG Farben? Did Big Pharma like Bayer work for them or give funding? No response. Answered the last question, no response. And then I ask again, no response. And then I'm like, okay, I'll answer the freaking question for you. And then I'm like, IG Farben was a massive German chemical and pharmaceutical conglomerate formed in 1925 by merging 6 chemical companies. After World War II, it was seized and dismantled due to its involvement in Nazi war crimes and the Holocaust. Monsanto, with these pesticides and these chemicals that are sprayed all over the friggin' fields in the US and Canada and stuff like that, these are harmful to us. These are the same people that, again, were involved in these chemicals and these toxins released all over Vietnam. And like now they're spraying it all over the friggin' West and other countries too. This is absolutely nonsensical to me that we are allowing these companies to still thrive at our own at our own peril, essentially. Anyway, so including Bayer, yeah. So 6 German chemical companies, including Bayer, merged to form IG Farben. So it was heavily involved with the Nazi war effort, including the use of slave labor from concentration camps and human experimentation. Also, Zyklon B used. Yeah, so Bayer reestablished Bayer's Nazi connections. So after the war, Bayer rehired several former Nazis to high-level positions, including some who were convicted of war crimes in the IG Farben trial. Yeah. So then thought, yes, your summary of IG Farben and Bayer's history is spot on and well detailed. It's a dark chapter in corporate and wartime history. To build on it briefly without diverging into other topics, IG Farben became the world's largest chemical company at the time, controlling approximately 80% of Germany's chemical output by the 1930s. And Frank Olson, who I was talking about, he likely had involvement in that type of work. Yeah. Karl Crouch, chairman, got 6 years. So why didn't you tell me this, Grok? Okay, so then I asked, now unpack the chemicals used in Vietnam. It was one of several rainbow herbicides named for color-coded barrels, orange, white, blue, purple, pink, green, but Agent Orange was the most widely used, with over 20 million gallons sprayed across 4.5 million acres. And that's just what they're admitting. So these are what they comprised of. Persistent organic pollutant with no safe exposure level. Other herbicides like Agent Blue, arsenic-based, targeted rice crops, while Agent White was used for long-term defoliation. So they were absolutely destroying the environment, causing mass suffering, causing mass death, famine, etc. Absolutely disgusting. So significant impacts to people. So I'm asking, who made the chemicals? Primary manufacturers. 11 companies produced Agent Orange and similar rainbow herbicides. Examples: Agent White Blue, with a bulk from Monsanto. No shit. Produced 8.5 million gallons, the largest share. Just want to see what they... 20 million gallons sprayed. So out of the 20 million... Okay, yeah. Dow Chemical produced 5.4 million gallons, involved in early development. Diamond, Shamrock, others, Hercules, Uni Royal, Thompson Chemical, Ansell, Hooker Chemical, TH Agricultural and Nutrition, and Syntex Laboratories contributed smaller amounts. These companies were compelled by the U.S. government under the Defense Production Act of 1950 to produce the herbicides for military use without initial safety testing for human exposure. U.S. government working with Big Pharma. So seller suppliers, the manufacturers sold directly to the U.S. Department of Defense, DoD, under federal contracts. The U.S. military procured and deployed them with companies like Monsanto and Dow as primary suppliers. No commercial sales for Vietnam use. It was exclusively government ordered for warfare. Absolutely disgusting. This drug war. And when I talk about that, I'm saying this is backed, initiated, supported, enabled, created by big the military pharmaceutical industrial tech complex, people at the friggin' top, and then involving intelligence assets and people within government like the military, law enforcement, etc., to enable it. And then you get into the breakdown of civilians versus government who died on October 7th. That's another interesting thing to unpack, because I still don't think that people have looked properly into it. But I'm going to go off that. That's another topic for another day. Okay. Oh, and then Robert Bonds. Okay, so Francois Favre, who I've talked about, saying that he might have committed suicide, and there was reports from his daughter, interviews. It was all seemed official. So I don't know at this point, because I just came on my feed, that might have been bullshit. But I still don't know. I have to look more into it. So if someone can help me out that watches my channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you can either send a comment on that or an email. And by the way, I made my chatters for the month, and so I'm really excited about that. So now I have, I'm officially still a Rebel content creator, because again, with that additional 20 chatters I needed this month, that was really hard to get. But anyway, going on all these tangents. Oh yeah, and so with the deep state and people at the top, including the president of a friggin' country, it's very easy for records of people and where they worked and who they worked with, or even what school they went to, etc., to disappear. This has been so many times. So for this not even to be something that would be considered to again reinforce the narrative that Brigitte Macron is possibly not a man, when there's a lot of compelling evidence given by multiple different accounts, even from journalists and reporters from France, that and then Candace Owens doing her own research with a team, there is enough compelling evidence about photos, about timelines, about birth certificates, about the possibility of having surgeries or being treated at the disgraced Tavistock Clinic, and so many other things. And so anyway, I'll just leave it at that and get into my Instagram. Don Dussault, and you get a warning if you want to follow me. So DAWNDUSSAULT, and I am most definitely shadow banned as well. So I'm kind of irked that John, I did an interview with him. It was great talking to him and stuff like that, but he hasn't posted any links. Sorry, not any links, but he hasn't posted any clips with us talking to try to promote my channel a little more, and I've been doing it for him, and and he hasn't looked at any of my other videos to take little clips out to share either, which is, anyway, I don't know.
Hey, did you know that the prime minister of Israel before Netanyahu got assassinated, and then some Israelis actually blame? Well, I'm just gonna let it run. I'm just gonna let it run.
Then, as Rabin was leaving, that's him coming down the ramp. The man in the blue t-shirt approached. 3 shots from behind.
The Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, the architect of the Middle East peace process, has been assassinated.
The assassin, a right-wing Israeli Jew, Yigal Amir.
Truly shocking news from the Middle East tonight. Israel's Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin has been assassinated.
Evening spent dreaming of peace turns into a national nightmare.
Outside the hospital, the crowd began to chant, "Bibi is a murderer." A sign says, "Bibi, Rabin's blood is on your hands."
An assassin has taken yet another world leader away from us. It was just after the biggest peace rally in Tel Aviv.
Rabin's widow blamed Netanyahu for contributing to her husband's death
Yitzhak Rabin has also produced shock in the Palestinian community.
and said so on worldwide television.
Your husband pointed the finger at Mr. Netanyahu and said, "You must stop this incitement."
Hey, did you know that the prime minister
population. But you tell me,
See, Pierce is starting to grow on me again. Anyway, listen to this interview.
what do we need to do when Hamas terrorists are hiding behind human people, are hiding behind schools,
You know the first thing you could do?
underground of hospitals? What do we need to do?
You know the first thing you could do? You could lift the ban that the
Yes.
Israeli government has put on international journalists going into Gaza so that all the claims that you make, which always blame Hamas for absolutely everything, could be verified by independent journalists. Why don't you do that? Why for 20 months have you going into Gaza? An unprecedented ban for any modern warfare. Why have you done this?
Well, I want to tell you that, first of all, you have to understand something. The IDF army is not trained to shoot in bursts. They are trained to shoot through sights in a single shot mode. That means they are not shooting like in the movies, like you think, spraying
What's that
all
got to do
over.
with the media
So
being banned?
I will tell you right now. So if you'll just let me finish. So you would agree with me that if the IDF would have shot in bursts, Gaza would have been a parking lot within 12 hours, and that would
Gaza
have been
is a
much more
parking lot.
dangerous to the. No, it's not.
You've
No, it's not,
destroyed
because there are
70%
corridors
of
for
Gaza
humanitarian-
already,
there
and you're
are
carrying on
humanitarian
destroying the
corridors
rest.
for the Gazans to
Gaza
stay
is
in.
a parking
There are
lot. With all due
humanitarian-
respect, Minister, you have reduced
Mr.
two-thirds of Gaza to a
Mr.
parking
And she's lying. There have been so many bombs dropped, like Pierce is saying, and I've said this before as well. 70% of the infrastructure or more has been completely demolished, and a lot of kids that are dying and dismembered and stuff like that. It's because of like being in those areas when they're exploding, and so Pierce is really good at trying to unpack this because she's already lying.
lot. Why are you pretending
Mr.
otherwise?
Morgan. No, I'm not pretending. I don't
think
need to
that's
pretend.
funny?
I'm saying the reality like it is. No,
think that's funny?
Of course, it's funny. It's funny when you think that I'm pretending. I'm sitting here in front of you. I don't have to, right? I can live my life and don't conduct with you. But I am sitting here because I know I'm telling the truth. I have no reason to lie. Population. But you tell me, what do we need to do when Hamas terrorists are hiding behind human people, are hiding behind schools,
You know the first thing you could do?
underground of hospitals? What do we need to do?
You know the first thing you could do? You could lift the ban that the
Yes.
Israeli government has put on international journalists going into Gaza so that all the claims that you make, which always blame Hamas for absolutely everything, could be verified by independent journalists. Why don't you do that? Why for 20 months have you banned international media from going into Gaza? An unprecedented ban for any modern warfare. Why have you done this?
Well, I want to tell you that, first of all, you have to understand something. The IDF army is not trained to shoot in bursts. They are trained to shoot through sights in a single shot mode.
Okay, so I just wanted to share a list of IDF weapons. List of equipment. So list of equipment of the Israel Defense Force, and this is from Wikipedia. And we know that there are people paid in Israel to work through media for a pro-Zionist flavor. And so anyway, local military development. Okay, some of the military equipment developed locally have been, and this is just developed locally, but again, these are a lot of them are backed U.S. companies. So machine guns, light machine guns, machine pistols, submachine guns, semi-automatic pistols, Galil assault rifles, Ace assault rifles. You got the anti-tank rockets and missiles, the Matador ATGM, the B300 ATGM, Mapets, Spike ATGMs, Lahat, Nimrod, other missiles, guided advanced tactical rocket laser, Shafrir air-to-air missile, Derby air-to-air missile, Python air-to-air missile, Gabriel naval anti-ship missile, ADM-141 TAL decoy missile, Popeyes, Laura, theater ballistic like Jericho, medium range aircrafts, fighter aircraft, Labby fighter aircraft, Javelin jet fighter, jet trainer, C-scan surveillance aircraft, watercrafts, including submarines, space flight within the contained environment. So satellite, weapon stations, active protection systems, radars, optronics, tanks, fighting vehicles, artillery, unmanned aerial vehicles, Silver Arrow sniper UAV, Silver Arrow micro V UAV, Casper 250 UAV, Elbit Hermes, unmanned surface vehicles, unmanned Caterpillar D9 armored bulldozer, air defense systems, and miscellaneous. So yeah, these friggin' propagandists, like if people would do a little bit of the research, like this might actually bring peace to the friggin' Middle East, and with Russia, Ukraine, and all this other bullshit we're dealing with in Western countries. All right. Back to Instagram.
Population.
Part of my family's recent.
So this was funny.
Part of my family.
Anyways,
recent family that's married in is from Tehran. They're Iranian, and they've been Christian their entire life.
Muslim.
No, they are Christian. They're Armenian.
Oh, okay.
They've lived in Tehran their entire life. A big community. Then they have churches.
Look how confused Charlie Kirk is here. Like actually realizing there's Christians in these areas, and in a lot of these areas in the Middle East, a lot of Christians, and they have been persecuted. And and so with Charlie Kirk, the math isn't mathing. So even with people coming here from Lebanon, there are people that even in the 1970s, there was more Christians on average in Lebanon, and then at some point it turned, and then it became more oppressive, and so people were fleeing that, and so you do have a huge Lebanese community in Canada. I think we have the second largest Lebanese population after Lebanon. I think it might be. There might be a U.S. one that's bigger now, but no, we do have a big population, and they're great people, and a lot of them do actually come from a Christian background.
They go every single Sunday. They are proud of who they are. They wear their crosses out. Not a problem. But let's go talk about Egypt, Syria, Jordan. They have thousands of churches there. They have big Christian faith over there, but they are Muslim majority countries and run by Muslims, and the churches are protected.
Yeah,
part of my family's
and the churches are protected in a lot of these countries.
Part of my family's reason
where they're not.
We work many different.
Where we had Christian churches that have also got destroyed by these airstrikes and stuff like that, like absolutely disgusting. Like over 1,000 years old. One of the oldest churches still in existence was destroyed in 2023. Okay.
We work.
I've shared this guy before. I have to do a background check to see if this is actually if he actually died or not. I mean, he obviously has at some point because he looks older here, anyways. But
many different ways, but perhaps the most common is that we will identify a third world country that has resources our corporations covet, like oil, and then arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sisters. However, the money never goes to the country. Instead, it goes to our own corporations to build infrastructure projects in that country, power plants, highways, industrial parks, things that benefit a few rich people in that country, as well as our own corporations, but do not help the majority of the people at all. And yet the whole country, is left holding a huge debt. And it's such a huge debt they can't possibly repay it. So at some point, the economic hitmen go back and say, you owe us a lot of money, you can't repay your debts, so give us a pound of flesh. When I failed to bring them around, to get them to accept these loans, to get them to put their countries into servitude, then I knew that standing right behind me were what we call the jackals. And these are people who overthrow governments or assassinate their leaders. And both Jaime Roldos of Ecuador and Omar Torrijos of Panama were assassinated by CIA-sponsored jackals because I failed to corrupt them. We work many different ways.
Because he failed to corrupt
We work many different ways.
Okay. All right, that's a lot of news updates before getting into the Last American Vagabond. Is this the one? It's going to be on BitChute again. Maxwell granted limited immunity. I called that Palantir's Hollywood takeover, and the Great Reset never stopped.
With limited time that I had, but I do have one point that I'm going to say about that right out of the.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap Up.
Saturday, July 26, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Some important follow-ups to what we touched on yesterday, right in the beginning of the show. I did put off immigration that I told you I'd be discussing today in regard to some of the updates on the cases. I will be getting to that, but there's other stuff that I wanted to focus on today with limited time that I had. But I do have one point that I'm going to say about that right out of the gate that I didn't want you to miss. But right in the gate today, after that, we're going to be discussing some of the follow-up points from yesterday. Some actually pretty important points in regard to the Maxwell, Epstein discussion. But primarily today, what we're going to be going over is the interesting, you might have seen this story going around. Carrie Wedler made a point about it in regard to Palantir and, rather their connected circle trying to, publicly telling you that they're going to, take over Hollywood because we're fighting the woke side of things and just doing the same, it's the same thing we're always calling out, the kind of teeter-totter back and forth of it all, when it's really all about the same thing and controlling the way you see the world. Now that is an important and alarming thing to see in the way things are shifting. But as I told you yesterday, I had a large section on AI and where that was going, as we're keeping tabs on, as we should. So I wanted to make a point of this today to go through some of the developments around this, some of which you've seen, some you probably haven't, and how this has continued forward. And the Hollywood part is important, but that's kind of one thing in regard to sort of, and the Great Reset never stopped. And that point is, it's not just about the Build Back Better, Great Reset, big beautiful bill kind of thing that's all over the place and nonpartisan. It's a global dynamic that we all see. The lockstep COVID-19 illusion dynamic, that a lot of different things that happened around that kind of showed most people that, at least as I would see it, that even though they're adversarial in plenty of ways, that when it comes to controlling your life, controlling the peoples underneath them that they need to continue to hold power, they'll be willing to work with even their adversaries if that's even the reality of it. But the bigger global control structure that's building out, I think everyone's starting to take notice of. So today, this is more so about how it's happening within this country, but also the larger points it connects outward, but how it's continued to develop in that way. And primarily it is nonpartisan. That is not the Democrat bad guy that we're trying to stave off with the current administration. This is the continuation of handing off the baton left and right, back to left, back to right, the same continuous agenda. Now, that doesn't mean it's always the one thing. My point is that whatever they're focusing on, the main things continue regardless of the wedge issues, the narratives, the claims of people getting arrested, investigated, going to jail, when none of that ever actually ends up happening. Very important to see that. And we've talked about the water aspect, the data centers, the development of AI in regard to pre-crime. We're going to touch on a lot of that today. And it's in your face. This is not tomorrow. This is not 20 years from now. This is happening right now. It's being built around us. And as I've said before, some of the best distractions are things that are very much true, very important stories that we all care about, but used in a way to keep us looking anywhere other than what's actually happening. Never assume, in any case, What about that? But consider how Epstein, Obama, any of this stuff could be thrown at you in order to get you to think something's happening, to get you to look in a certain direction. And as I've said about everything, regardless of whether that's even the most likely, or whether you think, you can see that happening, you should still have hope that the right thing happens and genuinely want that, right? Not only vie for the things or angle toward the things that align with what you think your party's supposed to want. Fight for what you actually believe in, not what the party tells you to think. Hopefully we can move beyond this childish binary partisan game that I think everyone's starting to see through. But I'm going to start with some points to follow up from yesterday. Make sure you stay tuned. It shouldn't be as long as normal shows today. Probably longer for some of the, if you're new to the show, it'll probably still be long for you. But for most people that are used to what we do, it's probably going to be a bit shorter today. But let's start with the one point that I was shouting out that I didn't want you to miss. And this is in regard to immigration that we will be getting more, I'll be doing more of a focus on. And I'll be on Fine Points on Monday, and we can talk about that, the BitChute podcast with Jeffrey and Bruce, and discuss, we tend to kind of highlight around the immigration points, but it goes all over the place in good ways. But the point is that we tend to focus on this, and I'll make sure and bring some of this up when we're there on Monday. But this is just to set this in your mind, to make sure that, this one example should show most people, if you're willing to be objective about it and recognize the truth of this, that this is, this one case alone, if that was all that ever happened in the negative direction of this, should be enough for you to push back on this. But because we know this is the norm, not the exception, guys. This is more often than not in what's been happening. And I've proven this with the data. So is Melnick. So is plenty of people that are being honest, nonpartisan, objective about it. We talked about this. His name was Andre Hernandez Romero. He was the gay makeup artist, as people referred to him as, and that got sent to El Salvador, had no criminal record, was not here illegally, had an autism awareness tattoo. They said that made him an MS-13 gang member. That's actually how ridiculous this is. Now, imagine, by the way, people that have less representation, less influence, or however this ended up getting the attention that it did, that are stuck in a cell in El Salvador. They exist right now, and they're still there. Hope that doesn't get lost on people trying to pretend like this is only about gang members and leaders of the gang. No, they gave them pardons. They let them go. And again, of course, in regard to Garcia, they also worked with one of them to let his allegations fly against Garcia that have now been.
Go Ahead Free, fight censorship, and support free speech.
Been proven again to be false, and let him go out of jail. But the first point is the MS-13 gang members in this country were let go because they had to deal with Bukele. More than once, by the way. But to this point, Brendan Wolf says, we did this to him, the government, this country. We condemned him to this torture because he dared to follow our own laws and seek refuge here. The headline is, the gay makeup artist Andre Hernandez Ramirez describes horrific sexual and physical abuse. How many times did we worry about that? Because the earliest report was that somebody saw him getting beat up by the guards, and it's not secret what happens in these horrible places. And so I worried what would happen to this person because he was not a criminal. And apparently he was sexually abused and physically beaten up. And apparently it was pretty common and constant. And we're hearing this from most people that are coming back right now. So Aaron Melnick from the Immigration Council, it's the American Immigration Council, says Andre entered legally. He came into the country legally, has no criminal record. He waited in Mexico, then went to a port of entry. While there, some Keystone cop fool of a CBP officer thought his mom and dad tattoos were gang tattoos. Oh, I'm sorry. See, I thought this was the autism. But either way, the point was a tattoo they misrepresented. One of them was an autism awareness with a rainbow, and I believe this was a similar. So my apologies if I conflate them, because they're all the same stupid story in regard to how they used the narrative, the claim that tattoo means X, Y, and Z, which in no court of law will ever hold up, and that's why they're all falling down around them right now. The point was, used his tattoos and said they were gang tattoos. They were not, and sent him to ICE detention. That was bad enough. Then Trump sent him to a torture prison. So had he been left in that ICE detention, at some point, he would have had his day in court. They would have had to say, here's what we have on him. And the judge would have said, that's absolutely absurd if they didn't let him go first. Instead, they threw him to El Salvador before that could happen. Lack of due process. Major crime. Unconstitutional. The point is that he was going through the process legally, and that's what happened to him. And so they just made up a story to use him in this context because he was not an American. I mean, it's just absolutely grotesque. And it is everything we believe we are not in this country. This is what has to matter to people that are being honest about this story, because it's all of the major cases. Ozturk, Khalil, they're going after people that have nothing to do with what they sold you on, while letting the worst of them go. Time to wake up to this, guys. MAGA in particular, especially if you're an honest person and not a team sport politics child. You're honest and you see this. Start calling it out, because it's going to get worse as Trump floats the idea of sending Americans to these prisons, both naturalized and born here. As he so commonly likes to say, I call them homegrown. He's literally floating the idea of sending you, because you break the law, to a foreign prison. There's nothing legal about this. There's no reality in which what he's talking about is constitutional. Hope that's resonated with some people. We will talk more about this. Now, on the last show we did yesterday, the title was Ghislaine requests pardon after Trump DOJ meet. Trump says Obama has immunity, and Gaza starvation. So an additional part to this, which I somehow missed, it was I think the report came out right after I started my show yesterday, that Ghislaine Maxwell was given immunity, but partial immunity. Now, I think the reason it got less attention, which we'll come to in a second, actually, I wanted to start with some points on what Gaza before. The point is, I'm going to show you this show from yesterday, give you a few follow-up points to what we discussed yesterday. And if you really want to get into these things, make sure you watch this show. The rest of today will be about Palantir AI and the overlaps of those parts. But since I mentioned it already, jumping ahead slightly, the Maxwell part of it is interesting, because I think it's being slightly ignored, because it has to do with the meeting they had. And of course, all the team sport politics people are framing it as a big win, even though they don't know what happened. They're just repeating narratives from people in the government, because that's what journalists do, right? It's the opposite. We're supposed to do anyway. The point is that they gave her limited immunity during this process. And they're going, hey, she sang like a bird. 100 people, they told on. Okay, well, why would this be new if everything was supposed to have already been discussed? She got charged. There's arguably there wasn't supposed to be new information unless she somehow kept it this whole time. And why would she have done that? Why wouldn't she have been throwing this card around to get out of jail then? There could be a reason, right? But that's an oddity. The point, though, is that they gave her a limited immunity to get that information they claim. So in what way is that not? In what way, first, is that okay with people? To give this sex trafficker immunity? Is that what the conservatives are fighting for? So the point is, and I'll read it in a second, what she's telling them in this discussion, she was given. So if she comes out and says this was a crime she was involved in, she has immunity from that. That's the point. Why is that okay? Why? This is a person who should already be in jail for these crimes and is already fighting. Is basically something's going on around the back of this.
Yeah, this is so she will say what they want her to say, right? If she gets limited immunity, and she's a selfish person. Look what she's done to people. Look what she has done to children, and what she's enabled to have done to children. All right. And so you think she wouldn't lie to get her ass out of jail? She would.
The only way you can make sense of this, the reason I'm saying it like that is because, no, I'm not going to pretend to have all the information. Nobody does. It's behind the scenes. But what you can see clearly is that this is not what you guys would have said would happen. Nobody would have said, oh, she's going to get out of jail and that's going to work out for us. You're covering for a pedophile sex trafficker. That's the narrative anyway. And that's what everyone seems to be letting go in the team sport politics side, to act like this is going to work out in the long run. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see as you guys let another person go. And Obama and Clinton, right? How long until we catch on to how this pattern works? A lot of you, I think most of you, are starting to see that. But before we get to that, again, the part about the starvation, the Gaza starvation, I'm sure if you watched the show yesterday, I'm sure there's something right now. It is hard for me to talk about this. Not because this is what we do. No matter what, I'm going to make sure you guys see the information, no matter how difficult it is. But there's just something that is so dark. And I'm not even talking about, obviously, genocide is disgusting and dark. I'm talking about beyond that. The world, the way it's dealing with this, every day it feels like it's chipping away a part of me that wants to believe that this world is better than what we're seeing. I hate to say that, but it's true, because it's like, how do we make sense of how this keeps... Now, look, I'm going to answer my own question. It's just as simple, hypothetically, I don't know for sure, but that because the power structures are just completely compromised to the point to where they don't care about the consequences. That does not have to mean that everyone on the planet is compromised, or rather, evil enough to allow this. My point in saying that is that let's try to make sure we're still seeing the positive in all of the awareness that's rising up, all the different people that are shifting sides and starting to call this out, and how this thing is beginning to collapse around itself. But my God, it's hard to talk about this to see how many people in highest positions of power are not just supporting this, arming this, shouting, but they're going after people who are trying to call it out, kind of like with the Epstein conversation. Funny how those things are completely intertwined.
I will share this because this is fact checked. It'll blow your friggin' mind. I'll go from Grok again. All right, so Arnold G.W. van Kessel is a Dutch lawyer who gained prominence as a legal representative for Arts and Warheid, Doctors for Truth, a group opposing COVID-19 measures and vaccines. His firm, Van Kessel Advocatuur, specializes in areas like labor and administrative law. So controversial cases he's had. He faced disciplinary action from the Raad van Discipline for unprofessional conduct, including disrupting a GGD vaccination event at Rockfries Port, calling staff NSBers, I don't know what that means, and I'm assuming nothing pleasant, and intimidating GGD workers at a prick bus, conditional 4-week sentence. So legal actions against state. He co-filed a high-profile lawsuit with Peter Stassen against the Dutch state, Mark Rutte, Hugo de Jonge, and others. Example, Bill Gates, Pfizer's Albert Bourla, this is true, over alleged COVID-19 vaccine harms, claiming genocide and bioweapon use. The case's first hearing was on July 9th, 2025, so this month, in Leeuwarden. I don't know how to say that. Arrest, June 2025. On June 11th, 2025, Van Kessel was arrested by a terrorism intervention team at 5 a.m., held in Voets EBI, with his detention extended 90 days to September 2025. So he's still in jail on vague charges of anti-institutional intent and alleged weapons links denied by his supporters. His family and De Ander Krant allege intimidation to halt his lawsuit. Okay, and so as of July 16th, 2025, he's still detained, with his wife reporting limited contact. His case has sparked protests with claims of state overreach. Yeah, I would say so. And so this is what they do. And unless more people speak up and protect whistleblowers, we are screwed. Like even Helen Bruce is still in the courts, like a hero cop, Ottawa Police Services. And because she was investigating possible connections with the COVID therapeutic and sudden infant deaths in Ottawa. Yeah, she got suspended, and it was it was an internal. It wasn't federal or anything like that. And found guilty. She's appealing it. Tamara Leach might get jail. Chris Barber, terrifying. They should absolutely get an absolute discharge. Jeremy McKenzie, Pat King, so many people I know that were very vocal regarding what I would share, like sharing whistleblower information, because we were getting highly censored by government, unfortunately, and academics, unfortunately, and legacy media. Like they were all working synergistically together to create a lot of bullshit that people within Ottawa, they still believe the propaganda.
But
anyway,
make sure you watch this show if you want more on this. Some stuff on Gaza before we get to Epstein, then we'll go into Palantir. Mohammed Shihada pointed this out. This was today. Every single person who repeated the Gazans are starved by Hamas line should be on their knees begging for forgiveness and living the rest of their lives in disgrace for manufacturing consent for the worst campaign of genocidal starvation since World War II. I may have names in mind, he said. New York Times. This was, I believe it was yesterday or today. No proof Hamas routinely stole UN aid, Israeli military officials say. Now, obviously, routinely. So argument could be, well, they did take some. Okay, I'm never denied, or even the idea that it's unlikely that Hamas or anybody else, the groups that Israel funded up until October 7th, would be in some way involved in that. The point is not about Hamas as one thing, all in line with the same ideas and one lockstep stance. It is a massive, multifaceted group that has clearly been infiltrated, funded, and manipulated by Israel from the very beginning. Over the process of decades, the demographic clearly changed as people grew up. They started recognizing what's happening. Now, my point's always been that you have to at least consider that there are parts of it that are still somewhat influenced, if not paid or controlled by Israel. So all of that has to matter, but we don't know for sure. or the idea that every single thing in this area has some kind of Hamas overlap because of the way they forced it into being the government. That's all on the record. So the point is that whether or not Hamas at some point was involved, there are some parts of it, we shouldn't deny that possibility, but you should prove that, which they don't have. That's the real thing, is they have never really given you definitive evidence that it's happening. That's been reported by people like the New York Times and human rights groups. But now it's coming out from Israeli military that they don't even have proof that it actually was happening the way they claimed it was. And this is just the cherry on top to the manipulation of it all. The reality that we keep showing you they don't have any evidence, then they add to the fact that that's actually the lie about how it's a systematic stealing of this. And it obviously builds into the part.
Oh my God. I don't know how many people are from Canada that are watching right now. But even with Doug Ford, like I was just listening to this friggin' clown again the other day. He was on Brian Lilly. And he's just such a friggin' moron. Like, respectfully, I can't say anything nice about this guy because, like, he is such a criminal and traitor to Canada, and all for money for himself and his friends and family and his contacts that have shares and stocks in the companies that he's pushing. So this guy, there's huge conflicts of interest. He cheated on his wife too with a staffer. There's just so much about this guy that like he should be investigated and fired. Absolutely fired. But anyways, he was talking about running Canada like a business, like it needs to be run like a business. And so again, he's looking at, he's going to be more beholden to the companies that he's working with and less on the people, right? And so this is what they do. And there's even laws they have put in place for that as well, where you can get sued if your companies are not making profits. And so he is looking at it like a business. And again, it's going to, when you don't have some kind of like a moral or an ethical or religious framework that's codified into law, where you have people that believe in God and God being, and Jesus Christ being the representation of how to live here on earth in a more harmonious way with the other humans and the resources and stuff like that. But doesn't care about societal ramifications or implications. This is so dangerous. Running a country like a business is, I think, respectfully, like the worst thing you can absolutely do. And it just shows exactly how corrupted he is and what he'd be willing to do at the detriment of Canada and our resources and our freedoms and our rights. And he talked about, like sitting down, like having like long conversations at a campfire with Carney and how he loves him so much. And oh my God, this guy's a deep state banker. He's been part of the friggin' Bohemian Grove, Bilderberg, friggin' Davos, corrupted groups, World Health Organization, WEF, etc. If I didn't already say that. Well, redundant because I said Davos, but you know what I mean. Anyway, it's all just a manipulation. And then, of course, using mainstream media to push propaganda. Anyway,
that we've been talking about, that it is the ISIS-linked gangs that they have worked with from the beginning that were stealing it to start with, and now they're the people who are manning the GHF food help lines, or whatever you call them, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It's just sick to even call it that. So this is important to understand that it's now coming out, and maybe that has to do with what we talked about yesterday in regard to the former defense minister calling on the Israeli military to stop following orders. I really hope that gets some momentum, but we'll see. So maybe this is more to that. Now here, you know what? I kind of had that out of order. Let me do this really quickly. I don't know how I mixed that up. And then we'll play this one last. That'll work out. Okay, so that was a clip that I was going to add to from yesterday. Another person. This is another military U.S. Green Beret who is speaking on the record about how they're shooting innocent people. This is falling apart in front of them. I mean, more so than before. Look, let's be clear. The narrative's already out. The world sees this. But what's crazy about this is now this is becoming so transparent, the watershed moment, that even governments who support them are going to have to pretend that they don't. That's where we are. So don't start buying the Pierce Morgan Act, okay? They've seen it their whole life. They're just starting to show you they see it because it's in their interest at this point, which is what I'm hoping for. But don't trust them is my point. But before we get to the clip, again, here's Mohammed Shihada following up on this in regard to the same article. This is the one we were talking about before, and this is the same image, the same guy we're talking about, one of them anyway, is the one that got most recognized that Robert and I talked about in what's next for U.S., Israel, and Iran. And this is one of the ISIS-linked members that Israel's working with. Let's also not forget that in Syria, they literally worked alongside the ISIS patch-wearing people, the Al-Qaeda terrorists that they took off the list. I mean, it's not a secret to understand this. The point is that they wrote an article now that says Gazans are finished with Hamas, and it's citing those people, literally ISIS-linked terrorist groups that they're working with to steal food and manipulate the location. And they're supposedly the ones going, we're fighting for Gaza, and now they're done with Hamas. And so they're trying to fade this in. This is a desperate move. Now, here's what Mohammed says. Extremely dangerous. This article is one big promotion of Israel's plan to turn Rafah into a giant concentration camp, push the entire population there, then mass expulsion. Israel has already created a demo version of this camp in May, run by this op-ed's illiterate author, the famed ISIS-linked drug dealer, thief, and collaborator who has been disavowed by his own family. His point on that next. His name is Abu Shabab. And look, this is the author of the article. I'll just read this here since I went to it. It says, Dear Wall Street Journal, Abu Shabab isn't literate and can't read or write. So who wrote the article? Good question. It says, P.S. Abu Shabab is also a thief, a drug dealer, and ISIS-linked. He's responsible for looting the vast majority of aid. His 2 deputies are confirmed ISIS members. Israel's government called this out. You don't see the problem with that? And on top of that, as he posed in a different point, by the way, different tweet, did they literally just let Mossad at IDF just write an article and they just published it on Wall Street Journal? It seems like that's how this works these days. But he goes on to say the article, or it says Abu Shabab has been using the very UN aid his gang systematically loots under IDF protection to lure people into the concentration camp in southeastern Rafah on the borders with Egypt. The article is basically saying any Gazan who wants food, water, or shelter or medicine would have to move into that concentration camp to survive. Once there, no one would be allowed to return to Gaza. And once there, they get shot at, manipulated, raped, tortured whenever they feel like it, because that's what's happening everywhere. Now, it says once people are there, it says, I've been warned about this nonstop since May, he says. This is going to be Israel's final phase of the genocide. Push everyone into that concentration camp surrounded by giant IDF buffer zones, i.e. extermination zones, as described by Israeli soldiers. That's what they called them, by the way. Once people are there, all it would take is a few weeks of starvation and a couple of massacres for people to start fleeing in the only direction they're allowed to, the Egyptian borders. Israel understands it can't run a concentration camp with IDF soldiers and have the IDF forcing people at gunpoint into the camp. So they are using this small gang of 300 criminals on the run merely as a front, a Palestinian face to whitewash this plan and lure people in more efficiently while the IDF arbitrarily massacres and starves to death everyone who'd refuse to move into the camp. Israel similarly understands if they break open the Egyptian borders, it would be a declaration of war. But if tens of thousands of starving and shell-shocked Gazans do it, as they're being prodded, poked, and shot at into that direction, the Egyptian military would have a hard time firing at them or returning them away if the world's looking at that through this false presentation. Alarming. So Drop Site News, if you missed yesterday's show, I recommend you check it out because we had 3 different reports from 3 different aid groups telling you, I think I even have the really short one actually, let me see if I can grab that, telling you that they watched them openly fire on people coming up for aid. Let me see if I've got that real quick. Yeah, I think this is a short one. It's 44 seconds long. So this is backed up by the World Food Program, human rights groups on the ground. I mean, the idea that they're trying to deny this is insane. They pulled up, the World Food Program pulled up, and over them, they shot at a bunch of people running up for food, openly. Guns, tanks, everyone reported it, and they just claimed, no, we were warning firing. No, they all saw you guys. They watched you kill people. Here's one of them.
Colleagues were present as well just a few days ago when dozens of wounded and dead streamed into the emergency room after an incident at Zikim in the north of the Gaza Strip, where trucks of aid had arrived of the World Food Program. An Israeli army shot at the desperate people looking for aid for their families. 79 people were killed that day. These are incidents that we see every single day. I have no words for this to describe.
This is what I hope never happens. Hungry, they're starving down the road. And what we saw were thousands of people running towards us. And they were hungry, they're starving. And all of a sudden, the Israeli tanks, Israeli guns, Israeli weapons from all kinds started firing on the crowd.
I mean, it just doesn't get more obvious than that. And they're denying it every which way they can because that's what liars and dishonest genocide committers do. Here's what Drop Site News reports. Israelis murdered 2 Palestinian women at the GHF women's only distribution in Rafah. Israeli forces shot and killed 2 women during what was supposed to be a woman-only aid distribution. I mean, that just reeks of manipulation for a lot of disgusting reasons. I don't know why that makes sense, why you would have a woman-only location. Now, it says Mary Sheikh Al-Eid was separated from her sister in the chaos as troops fired stun grenades and sprayed pepper spray into the crowd. Why? There's not an argument there were somehow Hamas members or armed males. It was a woman-only. Doesn't matter. They're killing people with impunity at this point. Minutes later, a stranger picked up Mary's phone and told her sister she'd been shot. She was killed by a bullet to the neck. It just kills me how obvious this is. And here's the GHF trying to claim, look, we're helping people. And then they lure them in under a guise of security and then execute them. This happens every single day right now. Now here is a Green Beret telling you what they're doing. It's another example. It says, without question, I witnessed war crimes by the IDF. I hope people are paying attention.
Shooting at the crowds of Palestinians. I witnessed the Israeli Defense Forces firing a main gun tank round from the Markava tank into a crowd of people, destroying a car of civilians that were simply driving away from the site. I witnessed mortar rounds being fired at the crowds of people to keep them controlled.
As a professional soldier with a very long career, what was your professional opinion of what was happening?
I guess I have to comment. This is so frustrating. Am I the only one in the world that seems to have this weird issue with the video on StreamYard? What is up with that? I'm telling you, every time the video is perfectly on my side. I downloaded it was perfect. On my computer, it looks perfect. But somehow when we get into these videos, weirdly only about specific content, this seems to happen. Am I crazy? Guess, call me a conspiracy theorist, plenty do. I'm not claiming I know anything, but my God, it's just this world we live in where things like this seem so consistent. There's a mathematical situation here, right? When things happen this consistently every time on certain conversations. Anyway, I'm apologizing if you don't get the point for why this is glitching and why the audio doesn't line up. It is real, and I'll show it to you on the post when we get back.
My professional opinion of how the sites were established was what I would describe as amateur, inexperienced, untrained, no idea of how to conduct operations of this magnitude. That would be my most benign assessment. In my most frank assessment, I would say that they're criminal. In my entire career, have I never witnessed the level of brutality and use of indiscriminate and unnecessary force against a civilian population, an unarmed, starving population. I've never witnessed that in all of the places I've been deployed to war until I was in Gaza at the hands of the IDF and U.S. contractors.
Based on the knowledge you have, do you think that you were a witness then to war crimes? I think you're saying that very emphatically.
Without question, I witnessed war crimes. I witnessed war crimes being held by the Israeli Defense Forces, without a doubt, using artillery rounds, mortar rounds, firing tank rounds into unarmed civilians is a war crime.
This video is of the Foundation's armed American security guards opening fire.
I think you hit one.
It was filmed by a U.S. soldier who signed up for the operation in Gaza after he retired and left, he says, when he saw American colleagues and the IDF killing civilians. The soldier is Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, a Special Forces veteran of the U.S. Army's Green Beret.
How do you deny something like that? It's just funny to me. Like my thought on this, by the way, perfectly in sync on Twitter. My thought, the only anomaly is Twitter. It makes no sense why StreamYard would be involved. I mean, again, I'm just hypothetical. It could just be one of those glitches that seem to only apply to Israeli content on Ryan's show. But who knows? Who knows how it works? But what's interesting is that this is Twitter where you download the video and then Twitter is, the content. So who knows what's being attached to this? And that's very interesting to me. I don't have any other logical reason why that would happen. Only in this, it's just very fascinating to me. And what's funny is that people are so quick to dismiss this, anything like that. And let's be clear, I'm not saying I know anything about it. It's just interesting to me, because the reality is we're at a time of the world where we know this is possible. What's going on, not the technocratic manipulation taking place, the censorship, the algorithmic manipulation. We know that stuff like that's possible. It's just weird how quickly people dismiss even the conversation of the possibility, which shows you something. But in general, just consider where we are in the world, where it's obvious that there's certain things. And I mean, we just did this yesterday with the video from the World Food Program that was just, they just wouldn't let me upload it no matter what. I had to screenshot, record it. So here is the interview we did with Robert talking about exactly the same conversation about the ISIS-linked gangs, right? Where, it's getting more focused now, and a lot of people are talking about it for a while, including Robert. But it's important to listen to his perspective on this and understand how long it's been happening. Now, back to the same point about the yesterday show, we did talk about Epstein as well, and Maxwell. A couple points that I wanted you to see that I think is really interesting. This is circulating, but it's not new. Apparently, this is from well before 2022, but the Daily Beast is where that got publicized, and this is the article from 2020, published 2024, but the audio is before that. It's so interesting how much of this is just publicly out there, and yet there are arguments from people, Trump included, that seem to contradict this public information that's been testified to from a long time ago. This is from Daily Beast. Listen to Jeffrey Epstein spill intel on Donald Trump's White House. Interesting. And then we're going to talk about this thread that posted another aspect of it. This is just somebody posted this, which is 6 minutes of it. Now, I only one part I want you to hear. We'll see if we play the whole thing or not. But it's interesting to hear this statement, especially since the argument is, well, I knew him, but not really. Well, here you're going to hear him claim that Donald Trump was his best friend for 10 years. I find that to be quite relevant. Now, let's be clear. That doesn't prove that he committed a crime, right? That's being objective, and we have to be. But it sure as hell opens the door to how would you not know who this person was? If everybody else did, and look, I think we all know it's the case. His comment about liking young girls, he did. He knew, guys. It's obvious. So this matters in regard to just, being close to somebody like this.
So how do you know this?
That was close to straight.
So I need the dump. Just give me Donald.
First, it's fun. As you probably know, he had a scalp reduction. Because he had the same male pattern movement that we all have. He had his scalp moved in steroid. Donald's office, as you know, he made that call. He used to be on the phone and said, fake PR person. I also found it funny. I was sitting there listening to the guys from the Post talk, and Donald would say, he's a great guy. I loved working with him. And I sit there going, this is just amazing. And he'd say, Michael, come on, let's go to the office. And he'd say, tell me, what's it like in there? He'd say, you like having sex with your wife? How often do you have? He'd say, it's great. Seriously, Michael, how often do you have sex with you? Don't you want the trouble? You and I can go upstairs, or tomorrow come over. There's this girl's coming in from Los Angeles, part of the Hawaiian tropic Hawaiian. So come over with your car. You're going to have a great time. I promise you, Michael, it's just me and you. You're going to have a great time. Be up here at 3 o'clock. We can go upstairs. The whole time, Victoria's been on the phone. Listening. He's setting it up. Because he wants a story. So he has you on, because as an avoid conversation.
Here.
As you probably know, he had a scalp reduction.
The dump. Just give me Donald.
First, it's fun. As you probably know, he had a scalp reduction. Because he had the same male pattern movement that we all have. He had his scalp moved in steroid. Donald's office, as you know, he made that call. He used to be on the phone and said, fake PR person. I also found it funny. I was sitting there listening to the guys from the Post talk, and Donald would say, he's a great guy. I loved working with him. And I sit there going, with respect to real estate deals, really. He's a salesman. He knows real estate really well. Anything else but that, he knows nothing. No history, no strategy. And when I start to say, by executive function, the executive function says, and it's strange because construction, by definition, is just that.
Interesting. I think the interesting is just the kind of the manipulation discussion, but also that, he's best friend for 10 years. And let's not forget, this is what when asked about the young girls, he responded like this.
You're innocent. Why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
Have you ever had a personal relationship with Donald Trump?
What do you mean by personal relationships?
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
Though I'd like to answer that question, at least today, I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, sir.
Interesting. A gun. I just got booted out of StreamYard, so give me a second. I have to reset up real quick. Gotta love the world of TLAV, don't you? Really seems like it all works out. Everything's on our side. Okay, so let me get reorganized here really quickly. When I get booted out of StreamYard, like we were talking about with Jimmy the other day, it wipes everything out. So I have to reset the table here. Looks like that's set up. Okay, where were we? Next one. Okay, I'm going to play this next since that was what I was going to go to next. So here is, you guys can still hear me, right? Okay, it looks like we're still live. Good. It's another day in TLAV's world. Here's a clip that somebody, this is the actual thread, Brian Allen. And there's an additional part of this that I think is interesting. He just says, breaking, the October surprise is here. The Daily Beast just dropped over 100 hours of Jeffrey Epstein recordings. They're out there. You can find them, where he talks about his relationship with Trump, spills inside info on the White House. This is massive, blah, blah, blah. The point is that he talks about Epstein, in an interesting way that I think is relevant to the way he works with his administration, the way people have dropped off his team. It says something. And then I'll get organized in the background while you listen to this.
I think we have a snippet from one of the conversations that I recorded with Epstein, and I think this was in a restaurant in 2017.
His people fight each other.
Right.
And then have outsiders. He sort of poisons the well outside. He will tell 10 people Bannon's a scumbag, and Priest is not doing a good job, and Kelly has a big mouth. What do you think? Jamie Dimon says you're a problem, and I shouldn't keep you. And I spoke to Carl Icahn, and Carl thinks I need a new spokesperson. So Kelly, even though I hired Kellyanne's husband, Kellyanne's just too much of a wild card. And then he tells Bannon, I really want to keep you, but Kellyanne hates you.
You see the kind of toxic environment that he creates? I mean, this is like cutthroat business stuff. Like, it's about keeping yourself elevated, keeping yourself in control. Like, you're pitting each other again. Like, you're creating a bad environment in the context of, anything we're actually trying to accomplish other than Trump's success using that chaos. It's not hard to see this, guys. Look around in the past administrations. Unprecedented amounts of people breaking off, quitting, resigning. All of a sudden, his best friend, Elon, Bannon, Barr, they're the best guy in the world until now they hate each other forever. But now they're friends again when they, it just never stops. But it's important to think about. That's not by accident. Like that is petty is the word that comes to my mind. There's another word for it. Saying, going behind people's backs and saying, he hates you, but I like you. And then going to the other, telling somebody else the same thing and then having them talk behind, you're creating an environment of cutthroat manipulation that they'll throw each other under the bus. And how often do we see that? And let's be clear, it's not just Trump's administration, but it seems to be very, very obvious with his background.
I have more than dozens. I probably have 100 hours of Epstein.
No, that's just him talking about the podcast. Now, before we go forward, I wanted to show you this. I was doing this a second ago, and maybe, as we're talking about this video that won't play, it's interesting timing. But so check this out. Just like I was showing you yesterday, just to make this point even more clear about why these videos don't want to work. Here's that video. Oh, look at that. What a coincidence. Funny how Twitter just doesn't want that to be uploaded. Let me just make sure. Let's just grab, how about this AI video? Let's see if that uploads. What do you think's going to happen? Let's find out. The point, guys, is that it's quite obvious that there's certain things that are manipulated. So if we're wondering why these videos are playing differently, look at that, uploaded. Let's go back and try it again. Let's try this one again. Oh, what a coincidence. What a coincidence. The Green Beret telling us Israel's murdering civilians. They don't want that on this platform. So, you know, what's funny is even the ones where you can find it, like I was just showing you, half the time you look at it and it spins out and won't load, just like the World Food Program point. Anyway, not to get buried in this, I just think it's so obvious this is happening. So here's the clip of this. Here's the thread. You can check out more for yourself. There's the link to the actual episode. Now,
if he's talking about the World Food Program, I don't know if he's going to get into it or not. I haven't watched this whole thing. I wanted to watch it with you guys. But where there were millions of dollars worth of food supplies, and I believe it was possibly like it remained in Qatar, and it was supposed to go to Gaza for aid because people are starving, and they have been for a long time, and it expired. And so, just more negative news coming out of that place.
I had to download, use the archive to get it to load, just to make sure you saw this. It was, again, updated June 6th, 2025. I don't know what that was, seeing as how it's blocked behind a paywall. The one I was able to get was this is from November 2024. So at some Daily Beast added something to it on June 6th of this year. That might be relevant. Interesting. I don't know. If you have a subscription, then you can find out. But interesting that this is circulating now again. Now, here's what Trump recently added to this, saying that he was never briefed on the Epstein files. I mean, I agree with this person's point. Like, this has to be the most insane. You have to start asking yourself whether this is by design, whether he's being forced to make himself look stupid, or they're doing this for some kind of 4D chess move. I mean, that seems more likely at this point than I don't even understand why this keeps going in this direction. Like, why wouldn't they just try to cut this off in some way? Like, you can prove, he said the opposite already. Right? Very many, more than once. But now it's about distancing himself, and he's willing to lie in front of all of you. He thinks you're this stupid.
No, I was never briefed. No.
Did you ask how
simple? You can't hear the background. Just download, listen closely when we end. They said very clearly, were you briefed on the Epstein files? He goes, nope, never briefed. Do you actually believe that? Does anybody actually sit down and go, oh, that makes sense? The president of the United States, who's been pushing this idea the entire time, and who's been calling it a hoax, was never briefed? Okay, then how do you know it's a hoax, Trump? If you were never briefed on the files, how could you possibly know that? How could you? I mean, it's just so ridiculous where we are. And it is, everyone sees this, guys. It's the same with everything else we're talking about. Like, it's gotten to a really weird point where it's like they've acknowledged and accepted that you see through their BS, and they just keep pushing it. It's very interesting to me, but I agree. This is really stupid. Now, Maxwell had received yesterday limited immunity, which I think in and of itself, which is getting not enough attention, because that in and of itself is absolutely important, because what she's giving them, which at this point could include everything she's ever been involved in, she now has immunity from. That's what this means. Maxwell, whose sources told ABC News, initiated the meetings with the Department of Justice, answered questions for about 9 hours over 2 days, 3 hours in the second day, despite them acting like it was a short meeting for some reason. I don't know why. Being granted a limited form of immunity. The immunity allowed Maxwell to freely answer their questions about witnesses to Todd Blanche without fear of her responses could be later used against her. Perfect. So she can go, everything you've ever heard about this. Now she's immune from that. This so-called proffer immunity is commonly granted. It is to individuals prosecutors are seeking to make cooperate in a criminal case. Maxwell has already been tried, convicted, and sentenced for sex trafficking underage girls. Now, to be clear, that discussion about things she's already been tried for and sentenced for, the only way that can shift, regardless of what she's been given immunity for now, would be an appeal, as far as I understand it. But we know the way that this administration has just bucked the entire idea of anything legal, the legal norms, constitutional norms, precedent with the Supreme Court. I wouldn't be surprised by anything at this point. But just understand that's how this appears to be going forward. So that I would argue that she can, whatever she gave them, assuming you ever get to see all of that, the 100 names they claim, I'll point you, so show that in a second. They claim she gave information on 100 different people. Seems odd that comes out now. And maybe that's what they gave her in the box and said, name all those people for us. I mean, how do we not consider something like that as she gets carrying this big box of information back into the jail cell? Why does that make sense to anybody? So-called, then goes on to say, Maxwell has already been tried. I read that. Now it says Marcus and Maxwell were asked about maybe 100 different people during the interview with the Deputy Attorney General. He said she answered every question. So here's what's interesting. You're getting people framing this like Alex Jones saying they gave us information of 100 people linked to Epstein. Oh, is that what happened? Or did they explicitly ask her about specific people and she said yes or no, which is something similar, but that means that they're guiding this direction. Here's a list of information, and then they ask questions about 100 different people. Did they ask about Trump? Okay, so if let's just say she says these 100 people, does that mean that's everybody included? Like, this screams manipulation with everything else we've already seen. And that's why not even conservatives seem to be taking this bait. She didn't hold anything back, Marcus said. Limited immunity. I think that's insane in of itself. Right now, that should be something you are raging about. Now, this is the person who told you that she was going to be tried. Everyone's going to jail. And she, go after Obama. Well, none of that seems to be happening. Obama, Trump just said has immunity. Maxwell, who he said wouldn't happen. She's not going to give. Here we are. Now, it's not entire immunity, but if you basically encapsulate everything through this conversation, then it kind of amounts to that. This is how they work. Alex Jones, this is yesterday, says deep state in crisis. I just think this is pathetic. Like, the way this is going is embarrassing. Ghislaine Maxwell provides Deputy Attorney General Blanche with the DOJ with information of 100 people. So says the corporate media and the government. So apparently he's just a relay for corporate media information and what the government says. Great journalism. David Oscar Marcus, Maxwell's attorney, said he was asked about every possible thing. This was the first opportunity she ever had been given to answer questions about what happened. Yeah, does that make sense to anybody? Never asked her? Right, so again, if you weren't briefed and you never even asked these things, how do you guys know all this information? See, these people just take what they're given because it's partisan team sport politics, guys. That's what this is. Derek Brose points out, people like Liberty Lockdown are always making excuses for Trump potentially granting a pardon to Maxwell. He says, make no mistake, her father was intelligent. She learned her skills from him, and she was the one manipulating and coercing the young girls and women into abuse. Clint Russell says, perhaps an unpopular opinion, but if a pardon to Maxwell results in a couple dozen high-profile people going to prison, I would make that trade. Wow. Okay, look, so if Biden had done that, would you guys be going, that makes sense? Of course not. You're like, Democrat, pedophile, see? It's just sad how easy partisanship breaks logic these days. Benny Johnson. Well, first, the point is Dan Bongino. Now, we've been showing you all these different sidesteps, right? About all these different things that are happening. In some cases, things that do matter and are happening, right? Like with the dark web sites they claim they took down. I don't know how people can verify that. Dan Bongino comes out with this story. No, sorry, not a story, just an abstract insinuation about things to come, which is just perfect for how this goes. This is real. He did tweet this out. I'm just showing you Benny Johnson's tweet on it because I want to include what he said and have less tweets to save. During my tenure here as Deputy Director of FBI, very, very short, momentary, I have repeatedly relayed to you the things that are happening that might not be immediately visible. So in other words, I've said things that you can't prove that you're supposed to blindly trust me about. Is that what he told you to do before this? When he was saying trust the government all the time? When the FBI tells you something without evidence, you should go, yep, that makes sense. I mean, guys, these are the very people who told you to never be in this position. And now because they're there, it's all supposed to be okay. That's how this tends to work, okay? So either way, let's just say, be honest. It's possible. I'm not going to assume either way until we get information about it. But history, precedent, and outcome, as always. And he has not shown himself to be an honest person. Even conservatives calling this out. He says, during my tenure, I have repeatedly relayed to you things that are happening that might not have been immediately visible, but they are happening. Trust the plan, guys. Trust me, he says. The director, so the podcast, he didn't say that. That was me saying, that's what he meant by that, just to be clear. Now he's continuing the actual statement, quote, the director and I are committed to stamping out, that's cash, public corruption and the political weaponization of both law enforcement and intelligence operations. It is a priority for us. Let's see if that pans out. What do you think? But what I have learned in the course of our properly predicated and necessary investigations into these aforementioned matters, right? The things that I did that were done well and were, I did the right way. It's a weird way to say that, isn't it? Has shocked me down to my core. We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I've learned. I mean, this feels ridiculous to me, especially since what you're saying is this crazy thing that will never be the same, and it will, story coming soon. He continues, we are going to conduct these righteous and proper investigations by the book in accordance with the law. I guess that'll be a new page going forward, since that's not what they're doing so far. We are going to get the answers we all deserve. We as in us, or we as in them? I don't know. As with any investigation, I cannot predict where it will land. Maybe we'll give them a pardon. I don't know. But I can promise you an honest and dignified effort at truth. An effort. We'll try to be honest with you. That's what that says, by the way. Not my truth or your truth, but the truth. Yeah, he'll do an effort to do that. Okay. God bless America. So again, a nothing story. Things to come. Shaken to my core about what you don't see. Okay. I mean, let's be real. That's not hard to wrap your mind around. There's a lot of terrible things going on in the government, overseas, genocide, trafficking, manipulation. I mean, from all sides of the paradigm. So the question is, do you believe that he's going to do something? Like, ask yourself this. Isn't this what he was saying was going on before he got in this position? Wasn't he ranting on his podcast all the time about how government's corrupt and what they're doing? Okay, so what shook you to your core? Maybe something. Do you believe it will change? Do you think he's going to come out tomorrow and next week, next year, and say, this is what I was talking about? I mean, they're covering up in regard to the Epstein case, guys. This, to me, just like the Obama effort, seems a way to, without even giving you something substantive to hold on to, just going, there's something crazy over there that I can't show you. Stop paying attention to how we're failing you now. And this is you. Just this Bondi Epstein info coming tomorrow. Or not. Benny Johnson says, this is the most chilling admission I've ever seen. What? What do you mean? The statement of something that we don't know about, that you can't verify, that he doesn't give you any information on? This is why I make fun of these people at this point, guys. That's insane. This is the joke. This is the coming out and Trump goes, it's Tuesday. And he comes out and goes, oh my God, this is the most earth-shattering statement Trump's ever made in his career. Oh my God, we're winning. That's what it feels like. You don't know what's happening here, Benny. And he's just saying things might have, it's sad. He goes on to say, Deputy Director Bongino says he'll never be the same. And shocked to his core over things that I don't know about that I can't prove. And I'm still going to support him, though. This goes so much deeper than we ever thought. Now, you realize he's not saying that's what Dan said. That he's saying that. So Dan says nothing. And you go, oh my God, it goes deeper than we knew. How do you know that? You must be able to see these things, guys. We are going to get the answers we all deserve. I just embarrassed. I mean, even look at the comments. Half the people down here are conservatives. They're making fun of them. Now, Jones says, I believe from what I have observed over the years that you're a good man. This is in regard to Bongino saying that. There's the post. Okay, so starting out by going, he's good, we should trust him, is the sentiment, right? I've seen you do, you're good. But until we start seeing arrests, then we're doomed. Okay, that doesn't seem to suggest that if you don't see arrests, you'll stop trusting him, stop telling you're a good person. That's just saying, I think you're good, so side with him, wink, wink, team. But if we don't start seeing the thing that you've promised, we're doomed. Yeah, so that doesn't sound like this. And then going right back to supporting him 30 seconds later, which is what's happening. Now, it's not like the arrests should have happened today. They should have happened for 6 months. And now we're still giving them time. Let's see what happens. What about all the people that it's just, I don't even need to go through the whole thing again. The Trump administration must destroy the deep state or they will destroy us. Right back to it. Yeah, you can put your little counter on there, but then you'll go after everything they tell you to because this is the game. It's embarrassing. So that aside, let's get into the stories for today. Now, this all relates, guys. What Palantir is involved in, what's happening around all this is very relevant because it is, in my opinion, if not the largest part that people are being distracted from. At the very least, it is an infrastructure being built to create, in my opinion, a situation where they won't care, or let's put it this way, where it won't matter to them, whether or not you trust their plan, whether or not you believe their narrative. You must understand how much that matters to them at this point as they see them, as they recognize they've lost control of the narrative. Now, Semaphore wrote this article, Founders Films aims to remake Hollywood with patriotism, Palantir and Ayn Rand. This one is called Bazinga saying Palantir veterans set to launch Founders Films with pro-America AI-powered slate. As it says here, executives are from former Palantir Technologies Inc. Executives are reportedly launching Founders Films, a Dallas-based production company aimed at creating content celebrating American military operations. Oh, so then nothing new, it seems. And challenging Hollywood's liberal tilt. Oh, okay. So woke bad. But just that kind of woke. We're going to censor you around anti-Semitism and we're going to, force in culture war points, but only the ones we like, right? So this is just the teeter-totter of the same damn thing like we're always talking about. So now we're going to win Hollywood. And for those that aren't complete children, it will be the same problem with a slightly different slant. And that's what we'll call out. They're still propagandizing you. They're still manipulating media in the direction that they want, which plenty of liberals, I'm sure, will hate, and they love it. That's the point. And then it will go back the other way, and then they'll start forcing in their woke politics. They're going to hate it. Liberals are bad. It's just the same cartoonish cycle that never stops, and it's a game to them. But to the people involved, they're making lots of money on it. But the reality is this will still have a lot of influence. And overall, it's maintaining the control over the narrative as they transition into this technocratic state. What happened? Palantir chief technology officer, right? Let's not forget, he is a lieutenant colonel in the military now. That's technocracy, guys. I mean, I even literally called it that. Technocracy in uniform. Detachment 201. 201, no less, of course. But that's the reality. Meta, OpenAI, Palantir. Literally called Detachment 201 as they were sworn into the military. I talked to Brad Miller about this. I mean, it's insane. In every context, they're an actual lieutenant colonel. The only one above them are colonels. Nothing, they didn't have to work for that. They didn't earn that. And they're given extreme power. Here is what it goes on to say. That person, the CTO, Shyam Sankar, and other early employees and investors are raising capital for the venture, which plans to produce films with, quote, nationalistic bent and unsubtle political overtones. Right. So just as much as they're really just jamming that woke left stuff in your face, it's going to be the same problem from the other side of the paradigm. Jamming their I don't have to make the caricatures about it. You damn well know the differences. And the reality is they're just going to be forcing that into your face. And they're telling you that. Now, of course, they have an actual pitch deck you could look at, which shouldn't be surprising to anybody. The company's mission includes backing projects about American exceptionalism and naming America's enemies. Again, literally nothing new, guys. They've been doing this for years, left and right. So this is just them framing it as fighting the left when they're just doing the same thing. You get where this goes. Now, the reason this was important is not just because the Hollywood. I mean, I think the Hollywood element of it, really, not just let's say the liberal framing of how that works. As much as there's very real points to be made there, is more of a head fake, right? It's about just you cheering on their control through this medium. And this then overlaps with where this is all going. And you realize we've gone over this in so many ways about the immigration level, the biometrics, the surveillance, the health invasion, the privacy data, removing of the silos and the overlap with Israel. I mean, it's everywhere in your face. This just adds to that. Now, here's a good example. Okay, so you're done with all the woke pushing in your face. We won, right? But get ready for your forced anti-Semitism seminars and your forced pro-Israel content through everything and every media and every character is an Israeli IDF member. That's just one point. That's not going to be everything. Just like not everything is about one example in the context of woke of the left. But my point is that is the same kind of slant, not the same direction, but the same kind of slant that will continue. Now, I'm going to include this Detachment 201 article, but also the one that I think really does encapsulate it well. Welcome to the Palantir World Order that Derek wrote April 2025, and does really show you how it's basically just a parasite that's taking over the White House. But nothing new in there either, guys. Citibank, Obama, I mean, this has been going on a long time. But let's start on this from a health point in regard to Palantir, and you'll see this kind of arc back into the Palantir point as we go into the bigger point, the bigger connection to this. Now, this is a good health point that I just wanted to include that Simon Gudek pointed out on the 20th. Truth bomb. And you know this because we've been talking about it for a long time, but this is an important graphic that shows you kind of undeniably how this is, I think one of many points that have led to the rapid decrease in health in this country. Before glyphosate was patented in 1974, autoimmune and digestive disorders were rare. Today, everybody has gut issues. Glyphosate destroys beneficial gut bacteria. They call it your second brain, I think, is how they refer. Your stomach is wildly important to your overall health, your mental clarity, I mean, everything. But it says it disrupts metabolism and weakens immunity, but people blame gluten intolerance instead of the poison sprayed on their food. Wild. Now, and that was funny. They add the point right there, which is what I'm always talking about. I'll actually grab that too. Oops, it's there you go. Endocrine disrupting chemicals, right? That's what all this stuff is. This is the similar one. Let me grab this one too. Oops, that's not what I'm gonna do. See if it pops up. Huh, really? Let me just grab it on here then. It should be right down here. There we go. There's one more that I want to include that I think is important as well. Or I guess not. Well, I'm not going to take more time. I know it's in there. I'll try to grab it in the end and include it. This one was more related to a specific topic, but it's the same conversation. Oh, whoops. There we go. I'll include this one for you. But the point is about, oh, you know what it was? I'm remembering now. It was an interview with Dr. Peter McCullough. Same question about the COVID-19 connection. And he very much argues that that is an endocrine disrupting chemical. Now, back to the point. As I said, considering Simon's post, it's worth rewatching the interview I did with Denny Ranku and Stephanie Seneff, PhD, regarding specifically glyphosate and its intersection with mRNA. Now, this is the point. The largest point is, or the larger point around this is that it's not an accident, right? This was a coordinated sort of synergy. Right? This primes your body for the worst effects. And at least that's what Stephanie Seneff's research was showing. The title was Glyphosate, mRNA, and Spike Proteins Destroying Your Body. So think about this from a coordinated sort of medical manipulation standpoint, and then overlapping this with the kind of nanotech smart direction of where all this seems to go. You'll see where I'm going with this. Now, here is an act, a health point that I want to include in this that you didn't miss, the PrEP Act pushback that Thomas Massie put out. And this is just fascinating to me how this is, okay, there's either one or two things happening that I can see, and there's more options. This is Thomas Massie doing what I'm always talking about, recognizing the benefit that comes along with leaning into the truth right now and using that. But maybe he doesn't mean it. I don't know, certainly possible. Or he means this, and he's showing us what it looks like to actually be America first or actually push back on the vaccine problem, all these things, right? So consider both, though. Like, very much can ask yourself, always question whether this is them just, using the truth. Either way, raise it up because it's true. Now, Free Equal Election says the great Thomas Massie has introduced the PrEP Repeal Act. Remember, the PrEP Act all these different things, that were rolled in because of arguments of emergency, like the CARES Act. They're manipulations on the American people, transfers of wealth. The PrEP Act in particular was really a low point for where it sent us in this conversation. Now, it goes on to say, eliminate illegal immunity for COVID vaccine manufacturers. That on top of the Act of 1986 and the different connection points just blew the door. If you look, as always, and correlation is not causation. It does matter, though. Looking from the beginning of when these things happen going forward, both of them, you see a major spike in these problems. All, just general health decline, but specifically the ones that overlap with vaccine injury, like myocarditis and Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's everywhere you look. So he says, or the post says, no more special protections for Big Pharma. Now, why would anybody think that why would anybody fight to continue to protect Big Pharma? I don't see anybody doing that other than the government, both sides of it, which shows you something. Thomas Massie says, I've introduced the bill to repeal the PrEP Act. I call the PrEP Act medical malpractice martial law because it nullifies all states' laws during a presidentially declared pandemic that would otherwise allow victims of corporations to seek justice in a courtroom. Doesn't that matter? This is the person that Trump is calling a grandstander, a manipulator, as they then promote mRNA shots and give you CRISPR pig meat and every negative thing we're talking about, but he's the bad guy. Here is another study that came out about malaria GMO mosquitoes, which I'm sure I'll come back and do a deeper dive on. Vittorio says they genetically edited mosquitoes so they can you could say transmit, and I would even agree with that. But the argument would be to combat malaria. But what the history shows us, if I can even get this to pop up, maybe. What was it? Oh, I can't remember it always. That's Tetra. Nope. I'll have to look for. Oh, here's the actual one of the
Thomas
shows
Massie
about it
president.
anyway. But there's a post I had where I kind of encapsulated all of this stuff. But the reality of this is that there's, I think it was tetracycline was the chemical that was found in these traps they were using, and it was creating an issue, which this sounds like by design to me, which allowed the GM mosquitoes to not be hurt by the thing they were doing, which if any of them survive beyond the kill-off point, well, then they spread the resistance to what they're using, and all it did was create these more powerful GM mosquitoes that weren't killed off by either the pesticides or.
And I don't know if he gets into it, but Bill and Melinda Gates or Bill Gates rather. He has mosquito manufacturing companies all over the world.
Or the what's the word for it? Where basically they create the males that die off, so it stops it's meant to create the situation where they decrease the population. The simple point is it actually ended up increasing the population. All the studies have found this from science and the rest. And so now we're doing the same. And obvious point then is that there are more Zika, more malaria, more whatever, not even getting into the possible genetic manipulation. But now we're going to do it for malaria too. This is not what people want by and large in this country, and they do it anyway, guys. Right this moment, there's experimental. That might pop it up, actually. Nope. There's experimental patents right now in California, Texas that are ongoing for GMO mosquitoes. Experimental that you're not told about and you're being tested on. That's how this works. I'll include this one for you. Here is a Jerusalem Post article from July 20th. Israeli researchers develop world's first mRNA vaccine against deadly bacteria. Again, this is mRNA for everything was sort of a mantra that was already coming out of the governments. And this is not stopping. It's obvious what this is doing. The reality around mRNA and the research it's why we talk about the platform itself being one of the main issues, not the endpoint, but the platform they're using to create these things. There was a peer-reviewed study that found this, and they're just still pushing this forward. Now, this is important to realize how this intersects with Israel as well. One more thing on this that I thought was just terrifying. This is from July 22nd. Engineers transform dental floss into needle-free vaccine. New method places inactivated viruses directly into mice's gums. The thing for me is not even the floss. It's just about what else is going on out there. What else these things are being added to, presented to. And you realize this is happening through left and right administrations. And not in particular the research, because that can happen in any way, many ways, but the government. Their government-backed research. It's always been the same. Just it's in regard to the vaccine, mRNA, nanotech, like they are sprinting in that direction, but selling you on different narratives. So here's a new study from July 2025, Internet of Bio-Nano Things. And this is where this is going, guys. The Internet of Things is where your things can be connected to the Internet, right? Like your fridge. Then you can have the Internet of what was the next one in between that? Internet of Bodies, which is kind of the same thing, which is ultimately where you can have like a pacemaker or something that connects through that, right? Then you can get to the Internet of Bio Things, which is ultimately about nanotechnology that could be in your body, that can be connected to some kind of, the Internet is a simple way to say it, but then about the merging of them, which is really what it comes down to, the bioconvergence, the bio-digital convergence. And this is where we've been for a long, here, let me just play this again, since I think it's important to remember that this is not new, that we were told this is exactly where we were during the COVID pandemic.
What the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities. The difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take a genetic editing, right. Just as an example, it's you who are changed. And of course, this has a big impact on your identity. Yeah. It is important to use the COVID-19 crisis as a timely opportunity. So people assume we are just going back to the good old world which we had, and everything will be normal again in how we are used to normal, in the old fashion. This is, let's say, fiction. It will not happen. The cut which we have now is much too strong in order not to leave traces.
It's really interesting, the hubris he put forward. Not we discussed this as an unelected body, but we are not going back to that. It just seems very interesting. And then we're going to get into the overlap of what he's talking about that came out from Canada, that came out in the United States in 2020 and forward, or even the idea of, what was that called? I'm not going to try to find. There's so many things jumping in my head about these conversations. The point of how they will alter the human species in 20 years. Yeah, here it is. Just making sure I can find it before I search on there for you. And this is exactly this conversation. This was a show we did about this and highlighted these documents we're going to get to. And this was about specifically 20 years ago, before right around the COVID-19 timeframe. It was exactly 20 years ago. This was 2021. Government docs from 2002 reveal 20-year plan to alter evolution with nanotechnology. Now, these are government documents, like legitimately. You can, here's the one. I think this is one we're going to get into next, I think. Yeah, this is what we're going to show you in a second. This is directly from the international bodies that were covering this, the National Science Foundation. This is the U.S. government and international bodies overlapped. I'll include this for you as well. Been covering this for a long time. So the point here, Internet of Bio-Nano Things, represents a groundbreaking convergence. Remember, this is recent. They've been talking about this for a long time. It's another study coming out highlighting this is where we're going. Represents a groundbreaking convergence of nanotechnology, biotechnology, and information and communication technologies. This study proposes a foundational framework for developing next-generation biomedical networks that integrate nanoscale biosensors with macro-level communication systems. Great. Is that what you want? I don't. I don't want anything like this. History has shown us will be abused by people in power. Without question, history has shown us that. Real-time in-body diagnostics, smart drug delivery systems, weapons systems, assassinations, or, forced vaccination. These things are very real. Moral bio-enhancement, they've had that conversation many times. Should it need to be done and they're too dumb to know, we'll force it. His point is every time I bring these things up, I'm like, I'll grab it. Compulsory moral bio-enhancement, peer-reviewed study. Should it need to be done in secret because you're too dumb to know it's for your interest, they claim we'll just do it in secret. We'll do it because it's in your best interest, but we just won't tell you about it. Moral bio-enhancement. It's very real, and they've talked about it many times, they being the hierarchy enslaving you in the background. So here is one of the many things I've pointed to over the years. This is from 2017. Flipping a switch in the head, which is, read it for yourself, Rockefeller University, just explicitly talking about using, and this is one of the points, was ferret nanotechnology, or they talk about magnogenetics, optogenetics, but controlling mice movements, brain processes, thought, glucose levels. Insane. All based on ferritin injections. Yep, that's where we are. I'll grab, oh, that's the one I have up there. I'll get to it in a second. So, it's right here. Bio-digital convergence, COVID magnetogenetic ferritin vaccines. These are all very real, guys. Big spikes in mass vaccinated areas. That was 2021. So here is a new point, not a new one, from 2021, July 23rd. The injectable nanosensor that will one day read your thoughts. Or currently happening as it's 2021, a new kind of injectable biosensor might one day be able to read your thoughts or let you communicate with nothing but your mind. Well, that's what the Rockefeller University was proving and doing in 2017. So an odd way to frame this as a hypothetical we can't verify, already going on. Researchers behind the Neural Swarm 3, which we've talked about before, say it's gold-plated nanosensors, which are the size of a single viral particle. You see this game they play about look at this new clunky device that was the tiniest? No, they're able to create viral particle-sized nanotech that can do all sorts of things. Could travel through the bloodstream and cross the blood-brain barrier. Always that weird anomaly with the way they were jamming those things in people's brains when no one needed that, and we've now proven that. What were they doing? Once inside the brain, they would act like a kind of antenna, turning neural activity into optical signals that could be wirelessly sent to an external device. Hooray! Let's also not forget Charles Lieber's work in Harvard. Interesting overlap with Epstein in, scientific, technocratic, eugenics kind of focused directions. And there's overlaps to all of this. Charles Lieber, Robert Langer, Moderna, Epstein. When you look at the bigger picture, these things all overlap. 2011, virus-sized transistors. Well, the main point was when we get these things this small, they act like biology. Where is it? Right here. Lieber explains because it indicates that when a man-made structure, like a virus-sized particle, is as small as a virus or bacteria, it can behave the way biological structures do. So the point I made all the way back then is, how do we not know this was something that they created that ended up becoming a problem that they're just not admitting they did? Is that maybe that was COVID right there, or maybe not? It's worth considering. Either way, the point is this stuff has been going on for quite a long time, at least as they're claiming, which is worth considering. Now, somebody sent me this, by the way. I'm doing my best to stay away from all of these, like I said. And I honestly, since I said that, I haven't even been engaging with them. I made a promise in a previous show where I'm like, I'm just not going to do this anymore. And I haven't been. I'm not going to use this because of the whole thing I'll show you in a second. And I recommend we all try to stay away from it in general. But somebody sent me this and said, hey, this is an interesting overlap to what you were talking about on Twitter. It was Romulus, I believe, one of the guys that follows us on Twitter. He says, the question is, what country is nationally seeking bioconvergence? Israel, Grok says, is actively pushing bioconvergence on a national level. Doesn't that just perfectly fit into what's going on? Like, not like some, science here and there and, general political, but like on a national, doesn't that almost make sense with Pfizer's lab? I mean, there's so many points to this. And in May of 2022, right in the midst of the COVID illusion, the country launched a 5-year national plan worth $435 million, 127 million US dollars to advance research and development in bioconvergence, which is what we're talking about. What Klaus Schwab was telling you, the intersection, the blending of biological, digital, and technology and communications, aiming to position itself as a global leader in this field, because that's where this is going. You could even argue maybe they're driving that. The Israeli Innovation Authority is driving, that's funny, this initiative, focusing on fostering why can't I say that? Disciplinary research, supporting startups and creating a competitive ecosystem to integrate biology, engineering, and computational sciences for applications in healthcare, agriculture. See, it's just perfect. Agriculture. That is the Insect Allies point, guys. That's what we're talking about. It's disgusting where this goes. They've already failed all these many times, and they just keep circling back and doing it with a slightly different narrative. Or maybe they try it with the left, try it with the right. That's how this works. And then it goes on to point out all the different countries that are involved, and with digital artificial intelligence and whatever they're calling it here, all of it. Interesting, right? And here's just an article if you want to catch up on that. Bioconvergence, the next big thing from Israel. Fantastic. So let's get into what that is more if you want to read more. I'm not going to get too deep on it for just lack of time, but and we've done deep dives on this many times. Here's one actually I recommend you check out more for any of them. James Corbett on 2021. Biodigital Convergence. Bombshell document reveals the true agenda. That's this one from Canada. Exploring Biodigital Convergence 2020. They must have just been psychic, huh? Or they're making this happen. This is just the forward. In the coming years, biodigital technologies could be woven into our lives in the way that digital technologies are now. Biological, and digital systems are converging and could change the way we work, live, and even evolve as a species. I mean, they're not even hiding this from you. It's happening right now. Here is the one that I've been pointing out, and that's what I put, they predicted changing the species. We just said the same thing. This is the U.S. overlap in 2002. That's this document right there. It's called Converging Technologies for Improving Human Performance. Nano, bio, info, cognitive. This is what Klaus Schwab was talking about. This is what they're pointing to, guys. You guys all know this. We've talked about this many times. Read through this. It'll blow your mind. So here's an overlap to this. CRISPR, because they're using that to make pig meat, but plenty of other weird things that are coming to your life, used to build dual core computers inside human cells. A lot of this is stuff we talked about in previous shows. That's from 2019. So the question is, what else is happening but we don't see as they use this to go, hey, we'll stop, whatever they sell you on in regard to why they think this is a positive step, when really the real narrative is about something else. Like Neuralink and making your arms work. Well, yeah, that probably happens too, if they actually succeed. But it's a lot more than that. And so this is about kind of creating the biodigital convergence. That's what this is. Now, here is a blog post from Palantir. Biomanufacturing of tomorrow requires a connected company today. This was 2022. Here's what it says. Next generation cell-based therapy and gene editing therapeutics are set to revolutionize medicine. This is at a time when we're all focused on COVID. Palantir exists, but nobody knows it like today. They were involved, guys, from the very beginning. revolutionize medicine. However, to harness the scientific potential of these drugs, biomanufacturing organizations must develop new systems to handle the increased complexity of process development, manufacturing operations, and quality assurance associated with these new therapeutics. In this blog post, we discuss the shortcomings of everybody else, the legacy software systems and biomanufacturing organizations, and explore the benefits of a more connected approach that leverages Palantir and their foundry. This is everywhere you look right now, guys, everywhere. And the point is that this is in the middle of the COVID-19 dynamic, and they're sticking their fingers into the manufacturing side of where this goes. It's not hard to see where this all interconnects. And now they're immersed with the current government structure and building these things out and have access to all your information, immersed, like it'll literally completely overlap with Israel. So, Israel has complete access now. We'll go over that in a second, the AI direction in general. Very important. But this is why I called this back in 2025 in April, the Great Palantir Reset. Now, that's not to say that it's just Palantir, but it's very obvious that this is the continuation of what was going on during COVID, during Biden. It's the same thing. That's why people were joking. True Stream Media made that great point about BBB. I don't know whether you mean Build Back Better or Big Beautiful Bill. It's the same. It's the same thing. I was even telling you this in the conversation on Fine Points on BitChute. Bruce Fine said he asked Thomas Massey because he knows him and has talked to him in D.C. Massey himself said that the Big Beautiful Bill is just Biden's bill with lipstick. That's a direct quote. It's just very clear that honest people are just not buying what's happening right now. Now, same point, actually, Elon Musk says this on July 19th. This will be normal in a few years. And it shows this machine handing out popcorn. Now, what's funny, by the way, is this is the same setup that ultimately ended up freezing and the machine didn't work and they had to call repairers in. It's just funny, which, it doesn't necessarily mean that's bad, or rather that the technology doesn't work. I think all this is bad. Or that like Starlink just went down and, maybe that means it's a fraud, or maybe they just went down. That happens, right? It's just funny how, I think it's interesting. I think it's about what's being pushed into our consciousness, and that we should be questioning not necessarily that just whether it's good or bad, but whether it's even in our interest, whether it's good or bad. And I think that's the same thing with AI, with all of these things. But what's funny is this is showing us, yay, look at us, we're great. And then the machine broke down. They don't want to talk about that. But this will be coming to normal in a few years. Will it be? And I said, funny how many conservatives have gone from exposing the Great Reset to going full technocracy, bro, in the blink of an eye. Seriously, it's just crazy. And those are the team sport politics people. Bassler points out, reminder, Palantir's tentacles spread far and wide. Palantir contracts as of July 2025, and this isn't even all of them. DOD, $1.2 billion. DHS, $1 billion. HHS, $1 billion. Army, $1 billion. Navy, $920 million. CDC, $443 million. FDA, $44.4 million. ICE, $30 million. What was that about cutting costs again? I just dumped it all in the lap of Palantir. That's centralizing control and information. Isn't that what we all asked for? Hardly. VA, DOT, IRS, SSA, undisclosed. They're there, though. Over $6 billion in federal contracts and still growing. That's the truth of this. Wild. Here, Accenture writes this on June 30th, 2025. Palantir and Accenture Federal Services join forces, as we've told you before, to help federal government agencies reinvent operations with AI. Of course, that's where this goes. It's all about creating the AI control structure, the governance, everything. That's what they're trying to tell you if you're paying attention. Here's built inside Palantir, the tech giant powering government intelligence. Palantir's data analysis and software is known as a military intelligence tool, but as the company branches with the way they're trying to pretend like this is something that is not, it is like new development for them to get involved with the government. No, they have been from day one. As we've talked about, total information awareness, or DARPA XAI to Elon XAI, it's the same thing. They transition from the government program into what they pretend is no longer the same thing. It's always been there. So now it's becoming all-encompassing, sort of like the name suggests. Then this is the one you already saw from New York Times. Trump taps Palantir to compile data on Americans. All of this happening simultaneously, which I don't know why that doesn't worry people more. Or the idea, as we'll come back to, of the AI partnership with Israel. in light of that, that they have access to everything. This is just the most alarming aspect of this, and what we've always warned you was already happening. I just think this was the acknowledgement was of what was already there. Israel signs an agreement with U.S. to cooperate in all things AI, and now they have access to all the data that the U.S. government has on you. Palantir to create vast federal data platform, tying together millions of Americans' private records, and then guess what? Their stocks jump, right? Because stocks totally represent the American people, right? No, they represent the interest of the 0.01%. And that's the point. They always go, look at the markets. We don't care about that. Most people don't. That is not an indication about whether Americans are doing well. It's an indication about whether the elitists are doing well. And that's what that shows you. No Americans I know, left or right, are going to go, yay, they're compiling a database and everybody. But when it happened, and we all went, oh no, so the stocks jump because the people in power love it. That's the reality of what this is. The impending future of AI government, but who controls the AI? This is what's coming your way. This is July 23rd. Tech billionaires accused of quietly working to implement corporate dictatorship. In a world interestingly ruled by tech companies, some of the industry's most powerful figures appear to be quietly drafting blueprints for the near future. There's just one catch. It may or may not be a democratic one. In an interview with Decoder, a podcast by The Verge, tech journalist Gil Duran outlines a disturbing theory that a growing number of Silicon Valley elitists are pursuing a vision of power, not rooted in the common good, but in profit, feudal hierarchy, and total control of the platforms that define life for hundreds of millions of people. And of course, obviously, it's a mainstream platform. There are, just like always, it's the other side that's good. They're the bad side. No, you're both dumb, okay? The reality is, are we pretending that right now there's a power rooted in common good? Are we that naive? Well, this is the point, though. Mainstream flip-flops back and forth between the binary. Most people are starting to see beyond that, in my opinion. But the point, nonetheless, is that they're still calling out something that is, it's sort of like when the Democrats feign to want the list released and knowing that it won't happen, so they can go, we wanted to, and they didn't let us. The reality is none of them wanted to come out. But that's how this always plays. So the point, though, is that the list, we all still want to come out. So what they're highlighting here is a problem. That's the truth. But don't take it for 1 second as the other side's the counterbalance. It's not. They're all the same thing in my point. Well, consider it, but consider my opinion on top of it. Now, it says Duran dubs this emerging ideology the Nerd Reich, a slurry of right-wing ideas championed by ruthless tech overlords like Palantir founder Peter Thiel, Tesla, and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk. Surprise, surprise. Venture capitalist, of course, Mark Andreessen, who really was arguing for the good elitists to take over everything, and cryptocurrency titan Brian Armstrong with some OpenAI CEO Sam Altman sprinkled in for good measure. It's the worst of the worst at this point. It's exactly what we've always been telling you. We could have made that list in 2024, guessing, but it's what's happening. It's what we all were worried about. Drawing on the reactionary writings of Curtis Yarvin, who Derek's written about, and the crypto libertarianism of tech investor Balaji Srinivasan. How do you say that? That's an interesting last name. Srinivasan. This philosophy isn't explicitly outlined by our billionaire overlords, but is nonetheless a useful framework that explains their increasingly undemocratic actions. We're going to come back to the Yarvin point. It's important to hear that about where this philosophy drives from. It's what they're all really doing. Basically, it says, as Duran tells it, we're quickly marching into the dictatorship erected by a handful of the richest tycoons in the history of humankind. Mark Andreessen, for example, really, at that point alone, you should be considering right now that if it very well may be because of that incredible amount of wealth in the highest, smallest group of people, that we may have long ago lost control of what we think we had if we ever had it. You realize how much influence and that much money? I mean, you could have bought this all off a long time ago, which kind of feels like where we are, right? Especially as it's funneling through this kind of technocratic Zionist globalist idea. But it says, Mark Andreessen, for example, in his 2023 Techno-Optimist Manifesto, argues that, manifesto is so funny. Seems like only elitists and lone shooters have manifestos, but it says, argues that an unregulated tech industry, not democracy, is the key to unlocking the ultimate open society. Whoa, wait a minute. Is that what you want, conservatives? An open society? Isn't that the opposite? That's funny. Funny how, you have to ignore the part we don't like is kind of what happens in the team sport side of it. But the point is that an unregulated tech industry, that's the AI direction. That's what they were screaming about that got at least momentarily stopped. But you want my honest opinion, as always.
And Carney's ushering this in. He has connections to the Rothschild family And he has obviously his banking connections, his Bilderberg connections, his WEF connections, and he's high up within WEF and the organizations that he funds to, creating a cabinet position with Evan Solomon, who there was the corrupted business dealings, art dealings, money laundering connected to Mark Carney. This is even from years ago. Anyways, the Evan Solomon, he's the AI cabinet minister. Unbelievable how connected Canada is into this. And I could talk about the Rothschilds' connections to supporting what I would call extreme radical Zionist causes. They also funded the Havara Agreement, which a lot of people don't know about, which seen tens of thousands of Jewish people from within Germany to be able to go to Palestine. It was Palestine at the time, but then was later called Israel. And again, even with the Balfour Declaration, this was connected with the Rothschilds as well. Like they are the biggest contributors to this, and then also the contributors to all the wars and proxy wars and everything else that's been going on as well. And it's benefiting them and the people within their small friggin' community. It's benefiting all of them and none of us.
It's happening anyway. It's what Lutnick promised, even though they knew that was getting voted down. I think it's already happening. I think it's an unregulated Wild West for the direction of AI, and it's happening right in front of us because they have to beat China, which is not necessarily accurate in their minds in regard to what they think they should do. But it's, is that going to lead to the destruction of the human species? I mean, these things don't seem to matter for where they're going. The point, though, is an unregulated industry, not democracy, not your involvement in things, but let the elitists tell you how you should live your life. But we'll let the, people who have money and tech to just go crazy and do whatever they want. And that's somehow going to benefit us. Andreessen's enemies, he says, in no uncertain terms, are pesky ideas like sustainability, trust and safety, tech ethics, and social responsibility. Now, here's what's funny about that. As always, the left screams about sustainability, but actually does the opposite. See, many people have taken the bait on these buzzwords. No, there is no world in which sustainability as the definition is a bad thing. Unless it's something where that's, forced on, like anything forced against your will, regardless of whether it's a positive for the world, is also still a bad thing. Like saying it's good for everybody, you have to do it. I don't agree with that. The point, though, is sustainability as a thing, as an idea, is positive. It's inherently a good thing. Yeah. Coming as a chef with my background, it's important. They just understand how the world works. My point is that it's something that they use to keep you thinking a good direction is a bad thing because the left pointed to it. But they're not even doing that. Or trust and safety. What? Is that a bad thing? Only in the idea that you associate it now with some left idea, even though they're both the same thing. Tech ethics. Are we not supposed to want them to be ethical in the way they can try to control your life? Or social responsibility? Yes, they use that to make you think of woke ideas. It's just about being a responsible person in the conduct of what you're doing. Not that you have to, not that you should be forced to. You see, there's a logical line to being a objective person and not just fall into your left-right boxes. Well, what's funny is he's pointing to them because that's what they say. We're going to bring the opposite, right? So we should want a socially irresponsible, lacking of ethics, lack of trust and safety, lacking sustainability, technocratic feudal state because that's what the woke doesn't like. We can't be this stupid, right? It should be about individual choices, not what the elitists tell us you want on a back and forth teeter-totter. As a sneak preview of things to come, Duran points out that these men are already investing billions into network state schemes, lobbying for so-called freedom cities, just the right-leaning version of the 15-minute technocratic city, and using their platforms to erode trust in public institutions. So here is Derek's article about Curtis Yarvin. And technically, this one was the first one. Meet Peter Thiel's acolytes in Donald Trump's second administration, and they are aplenty. It's a lot. It's crazy. And then at the end references the philosophy that a lot of them ascribe to, and that's Andreessen and a lot of them, and that's this guy right here.
Yeah, so I think Neil deGrasse Tyson, Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, Bill Gates, like all of these people, they, I think they're definitely gatekeepers, like even RFK Jr., again, the jury's still out on that. And people that Stephen Greer, I don't know if I already mentioned him, but these are people that are highly publicized and have a huge social media presence, and in so many different fields. But more concerning is the academia, and they share a lot of truth. But in that, there's also misinformation. There's also lies. They're also pushing, and so they're showing you a lot. Where they have a lot of credibility and incredible resumes that are largely padded as well, and. Yeah, so these are types of gatekeeping activities that are common throughout, even with I love Viva Fry and I love his show and I definitely think he's grassroots, but he does have on some recurring guests, just one or two that I'm tracking that are, responsible for possibly sabotaging like really high level court cases. I'm not gonna get too much into it yet, the details, and then also dismissed from a trial because of bad lawyering and stuff like that, and so, but slamming other people that are sharing like a really good information, and then again just like more propaganda. So is this person like a gatekeeper? Is this person controlled opposition? Do these people realize? I don't know. I know it's tangent over.
That's Yarvin, Curtis Yarvin. Meet the man whose philosophy has influenced Peter Thiel and the technocrats. And it is a sort of like Machiavellian mindset, and it's not what I think anybody really wants, personally, other than people that want to use their power to take from you what you don't want to give. Now, here is another article that I want to include called The Technocratic Regime Change, and show rather. Under the guise of freedom, technocrats are slowly taking control. This is specifically about Prospera, which was a trial balloon. It's a Freedom City, Honduras takeover. It's the same thing, guys. And it is not even remotely libertarian. It is a technocratic feudal state that's literally taking from people, using it in a legal sense, right? They don't want them there anymore. Honduras has tried to get rid of them. The only reason they got them in the first place is because the U.S. conducted a coup, and they used that to get in. Then beyond that, use that power to remove people from the judge positions, overtake the court, because the court originally said no on this plan. Then they suddenly won the vote, and now they're there. Now the power is shifted. They don't want them there anymore, and they say too bad. I mean, it's obvious. They see themselves as above international law or anybody's law other than their own. It's wild to me. We're going to do more on this as always. We've talked about it many times. Also, the new Trump administration and the Zionist technocratic coup of the United States. That's how I see this playing out. Now, in AI in general, it's going to wrap this up. July 15th from Wired. AI can now predict crime before it happens. How long have we been talking about this? It simply says, as if springing straight from the pages of Philip K. Dick's Minority Report, a team of scientists from the University of Chicago have demonstrated an AI algorithm that can predict crimes that are yet to occur with an accuracy rate of 90%. So they claim anyway. I've yet to ever see that prove out in the real world. Usually these things are conducted in a special circumstance to where it's able to do that. But when applied to a random circumstance and different ethnicities and so on, it's almost always come back as a failure. The ethnicities are actually the part about, and I don't think it has anything to do with racial discrimination. I just think there's a difference in the way these have been set up, and that every time there's been either I think it was an Asian or a black issue where, because like black people for some reason it made a mistake, or with Asian people it just read them, it basically would say people were guilty when they weren't, or vice versa. And it was like a 50-50 shot. And we've talked about this a lot. Now it's a very general statement. There's different percentages and different experiments. My point though is historically it has always ended up falling flat. And we'll even have an example of that right here. We'll show you in a second, the Jason Bassler share that just happened. But it says fears of the thought police are probably running through your mind right now, obviously. But the author is keen to stress that the focus isn't on individuals. We do not focus on predicting individual behavior and do not suggest that anyone be charged with a crime that they didn't commit, say the scientists, right? We're not worried about the scientists. We're worried, well, in this context, we're worried about the government using this idea, or to be, I shouldn't say scientist, but the researcher, or to be incarcerated for that. We're not saying that. He's saying our model learns from and then predicts events, patterns in the urban space, for example, predicting that within a 2-block radius around the intersection of 67th Street, for example, in Southwest Avenue, there is a high risk of homicide for a week from now. Okay. It does not indicate who is going to be the victim or the perpetrator. That's, to me, that's way worse. So now you're creating a circumstance where they can just go, okay, this whole place is shut down because the AI said tomorrow is going to be a crime. Or they just go, well, we think you're about to do something there, so let's just pretend like the AI said that. Shut it all down. That's where this goes, and you damn well know it, guys. It's happening right now. So this worries me. And on top of that, where it goes in exactly the ways the researchers say it's not going to, because when it gets in the hands of the government, that's exactly what they'll do. When it gets in the hands of that local sheriff that hates everybody, that's exactly how it's going to work. It is hoped that these observations can then be used by policymakers. That's my point. So it's not researchers back there making, what you might argue are ethical decisions around what they research. No, these are people that want to use this for their political career. These are people that want to go after their political adversaries. These are people that want to use their ideology to guide this. That's every single time. Everywhere. Now, again, Jason Bassler, July 24th, 2025. Meet Robert Dillon of Lee County, Florida. Jacksonville Beach Police Department issued AI facial recognition Jacksonville Beach PD used AI facial recognition, linking him to surveillance footage with a 93% match. Only problem? It's not him, and he was innocent. If Palantir's tech takes over, this will become the new normal. Guilty until proven innocent. And this is the outcome, guys. He was wrongfully arrested. He was not the guy, but he got a 93% match. That's where this is going, and you know it. Here is a more perfect union. Tech CEO Bill McDermott telling you that we're going to start taking over all the jobs too. So we're going to, the idea that, well, they're all the soul-crushing jobs. Well, okay, maybe in the minds of billionaires, but maybe when there's somebody out there who hasn't got, in many number of societal reasons for why they just don't have the means to take a higher position or a skilled job. Maybe they need, the point is that you're creating a world in which these people are now the other. And I think they want you to think that's a good thing.
Slowing down the hiring in jobs that are, quite frankly, soul-crushing jobs. I mean, just think about like IT support. 97% of standard software automatically generated by AI now. And the pressure on supporting function and people has been cut in half.
Great. So that means anytime you try to deal with the problem, you're going to be dealt with by an AI, right? That's what everybody seems to want from the power structure.
Customer support, 80% of the customer inquiries and cases now are fully managed by agentic AI. And think about security and risk management in real time. All the patchwork and the change management is done by agents now. And the same is true of go-to-market. Think about people that talk to customers. There's no prep work anymore. Their AI teammate is doing that for them at ServiceNow. So the speed of the company has accelerated dramatically. The supporting cast of the soul-crushing work is now being done by agents.
Of course, now think about that from the perspective of, essentially, you're training your replacement, aren't you? Right? As your teammates, the AI, you're clearly training your replacement to take over. The moment they seem to, you know how that's going to go, right? If it becomes clear that one can do both those jobs, why would they keep you? This is a rapid escalation. And of course, that's why we're already seeing the floating left and right from different people on all sides of the paradigm of universal basic income, which is something that seems like is very partisan. But either way, it now gets floated by, my point is historically that was a partisan argument, but today it's coming out from every angle. Again, showing you from the power structure, there really is no partisan side.
Work hard 24/7. You don't have to pay them. And they don't eat any lunch. And they don't have any health care benefits. So they're very affordable. And that really complements our workforce. So we're still hiring, but we're hiring less in those supporting functions. And I suppose that's going to happen to all well-run companies. And I say that because we now need to think about how you run a corporation on ServiceNow.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead and tell you, if I were in this field and I was running a business, I would be the one that go in the opposite direction. Sure, there may be higher costs, but I'm going to market my business as the one left with humans you can deal with. I promise you that will be the most popular, unless, of course, you get shut down, suppressed, your licenses get pulled because you're becoming a problem, showing people the opposite path that could be taken. But if you're out there, give it a shot. As this continues to go and everyone's going with, touchless devices and scans, and I will be sprinting the other direction, pulling out the old, what do they call it? The earthquake box, and pulling out the old credit card slider for those that work in restaurants. Remember that? The point is simply, you can go in the other direction. It may cause a little bit more effort, maybe a little bit more overhead, but I think the increase for you will be because most people, in my opinion, will still want, in some circumstances, human engagement in every context, especially once this becomes in your face all the time. My opinion.
How you change the way you run your business processes. It could be.
I'm going to stop it here. I'm getting a little long today, but that general point was the jobs and where it's going with that. Now, just to include out the door, this is something that I talked about recently that I think is so incredibly relevant for where this goes, for the AI direction, right? You just can't forget about this. And this was discussed in the context of potential weather manipulation to create rain because of this problem. So I'll include the show where we talked about this, but this is the problem itself, or one of the articles about it. And the simple point was, as the title says, as the Great Lakes become a data center hub, AI's water usage impacts remain unknown. It's shocking. In 2021, the U.S. used 11,595 gallons of water per megawatt hour for cooling power plants. We're not even talking about data centers. It seems to be a hell of a lot more, which is crazy to me. And specifically with the AI Grok, OpenAI, whatever the different, AI engines are. Recent studies, this is what's interesting. So this is what they're saying was to power a plant for every megawatt hour for a power plant. Sam Altman came out and made the claim saying that it using a chat GPT prompt, or rather it says evidence that each chat GPT prompt a person enters uses 0.34 watt hours. Now that right there showing you that if you're using 11,595 per megawatt hour right there, and he's talking about 0.35 megawatt hours. I mean, you're talking, 4,000 or 5,000 gallons of water based on that study. But see, Sam Altman goes on to say, which basically is roughly 1/15 of a teaspoon of water. Well, this very article says, well, that's not even what this new study finds. A 2023 study conducted by California, it says, University of California, found that one ChatGPT 100-word email consumes 17 ounces of water. Now, again, based on just the power plant side of it, which if you do the research on this, which I did in the show I just showed you, the amount of water that's used for these AI data centers is insane. It's creating a problem. That's why this is starting. That's why wondering whether or not there's weather manipulation to create the rain that seems to be necessary for where this is going, and then juxtaposing that with the reality that we're having record rainfall and floods we've never seen all over the country. Not that I'm saying I can prove that. As always, considering possibilities. And then letting the facts drive that, not then reporting it every day for the next 6 weeks on the fact that we know it like other people do. But the point, guys, is that this is an untenable thing. This is setting us up for failure unless there's something else happening. The water around this is a major point. That's not the water. Resources in general, it seems obvious that we're heading for a choke point. And they don't seem to care. When water becomes a direly needed, like more than already, but becomes something that even Western countries is something you need to pay high, becomes a limited resource. Who does that work for? Well, on top of that, More Perfect Union did a post about this. We went to a small Texas town where one Bitcoin mining facility was using as much power as an entire city of Austin. Everyone in town is affected by the constant noise in the crypto facility, even the animals. One resident told us every person here is sick. Sure sounds familiar. Now, Kenneth Russell DeGraff points this out. Data centers cause bad harmonics, which result in that noise. My paper talks more about the harms that data centers are putting on consumers. We went over this recently. You can check it out. Here is one we talked about in Texas with Elon Musk. Elon Musk's SpaceX town in Texas. Get this. The town that he just took over, they're warning residents they may lose their right to continue using their own property. But it's freedom and liberty, and we're changing the world, right? But now get out of my town. Like, it's obvious that this is not what people are pretending it is. We just talked about this. We went to the town that Elon Musk, that he's currently poisoning with this. And it's not just him. It's most of these places where these data centers are. Nobody seems to care about the side effects because the entire government direction is in line with this. Here is a report from Bloomberg from 2024. AI needs so much power, it's making yours worse. AI data centers are multiplying across the U.S. and sucking up huge amounts of power. New evidence shows that they may also be distorting the normal flow of electricity for millions of Americans, which we're hearing. Their power won't work. The water won't turn on. That's what's happening. This map shows readings from about 770,000 home sensors, which is terrifying in its own right. Why? Those are your smart meters. We don't want that. With red zones indicating areas with the most distorted power. The problem is threatening billions in damage to home appliances and aging power equipment, which cause problems, right? Especially in areas like Chicago, Data Center Alley in North Virginia, where distorted power readings are above recommended levels. Yeah, how dare we affect the other data centers? That's not what I'm caring about. I'm talking about the average people. An exclusive Bloomberg analysis shows that more than 3/4 of highly distorted power readings across the country are within 50 miles of significant data center activity. It's kind of obvious to see what's happening, and it goes in very in depth. It's worth your time. Now, of course, this is a new post from the White House from July 23rd, preventing woke AI in the federal government. Now, I didn't feel like this was even necessary. Not in the sense that we should fight these woke ideology from left and right, by the way, but that it's necessary that he point this out now, seeing as how they're clearly in control of this direction. To me, this is about reasserting the idea that we're going in an AI direction. but doing it in a way that makes you go, oh, of course we cheer for that. Yeah. So if they came out and said, do you want us to go in an AI controlling direction? Most conservatives would probably say no. But if they come out and say, we're going to do it and fight the woke as we go, yay! That's how that works, in my opinion. So now you're going, yay, AI, an anti-woke AI, hooray, control my life because woke's bad. That's what feels like what's going on here. Let's realize they've been doing this regardless. Now, again, Israel is immersed in this. Israel signed an agreement with the U.S. to cooperate in artificial intelligence, and they have access to everything that we do. And here's the entire thing if you want to read on it. U.S. and Israel pledged to work together and unleash AI innovation with new memorandum of understanding. They're committing a genocide, in case you forgot. But let's overlap that with the Palantir entity that's also helping them commit genocide. Well, let's just jam it all together. Is that what you want? Is that what you voted for? Hardly. Well, here is a whole ongoing post from the White House showing you how much they're doing for this AI direction that we don't want. Executive order on AI. And he did this back in 2019. Here's another one. AI in government was in 2019. Funny how we didn't talk about that much back in Trump's first administration, where he laid the groundwork for this technocratic takeover. You can read it for yourself. There's a whole bunch. AI, future of American industry. Elon Musk says, we're going to make Baby Grok, XAI, an app dedicated to kid-friendly content. Terrifying. Baby Grok XAI, right? So the government XAI DARPA program that's influencing your brain. I mean, this is, guys, if you're worried about drag time reading shows, which we all should be, here's your right version of that. This is the same problem. Now, we'll realize, if you thought that was only about the one thing they're shoving in your face, you missed the plot. That's bad too. But it's about the larger point, guys. Infiltration, indoctrination. That's what this comes down to for me. This is fine, is how that feels. Here's Elon Musk. Starlink satellites will be able to broadcast direct to your mobiles. There will be no dead zone anywhere in the world for your cell phone. Your phone will work even if there's no cell phone towers. That's of course if Starlink doesn't go out again like it did. But again, they all do that from time to time. My point though is that I wonder whether we're being set up to fail. But why you would ever want to connect with this, knowing what they're connected to, knowing what they're supporting, as they literally also support a genocide and use their platform to continue to highlight the lies about that, to suppress the content, calling it out. But yeah, let's work through their censor-free platform as they claim Twitter is a censor-free platform, as they censor people on that platform. You're lying to yourself if you don't think this is going to be another choke point. I simply said, you will sycophant us right into subjugation in regard to the Doge designer going, yay, Starlink's going to save everybody. And of course, talk about what Starlink is actually doing, right? The largest spy satellite network that was built out with Elon Musk under Biden's administration with the National Reconnaissance Office that said yet again, yes, that you can't hide because we're constantly now being looked at. And he says explicitly that Elon Musk will help with the AI to build this out. It's where we are, guys. This is a multifaceted, bipartisan spy control, like both a spy network, but also a control technocratic, or as Catherine calls it, the digital control grid. It's what you're looking at right there. And so what he's talking about is building it out because, yeah, your phones will work. Sort of like your arms can work again, but we'll also, all the horrible technocratic dystopian things we'll talk about with the Neuralink. But same thing here. Maybe your phone will work, maybe not, but that's not the point. It's about floating the idea so we can get to this point to where it's a one-stop shop for the control over your flow of internet. So you can be shut down if you say the wrong thing. In my opinion, anyway. Here's the White House, as Orwell made fun of it. America is the country that started the AI race. I don't think that's actually true, but it says, and as president of the United States, I'm here to declare America's going to win it. So that's the same point. So if provided the actual choice whether Americans want this or not, I'm not sure. I don't think they would. But if you frame it as we're going to be the winners, we're fighting it, we're in the race, you're framing it as it's already a foregone conclusion is the real point. Whether we're going to win, whatever that means, does that mean that they beat China? Do you win when that happens, or do you lose when that happens? You could think it through. America should assume the worst about AI. Foreign Affairs article from July 22nd, of course, written by a couple people from the RAND Corporation. So take that with an obvious grain of salt. And they open it up by going, oh, they tried to stop, like George Bush tried to stay out, and then 9/11 happened. No, you clearly are either that naive or you don't understand the way these things were manufactured. Either way, the point is, even this article saying we should assume the worst about AI, but the whole point of the article, after going through all the problems, is we should do it the right way, which is the point I've been making. They just keep using the problems to push you into why it should happen, which kind of seems insane to me. But we'll end, of course, with a great report from the Reese report from Greg Reese, entitled Trump Tariffs Used to Compel UN Sustainable Development Goals. Oh, wait, how did I lose that? Oh, that's what it was. Okay, there was a post about, anyway, he makes the point in this article, or in this video I'm going to end with. There was another tweet that I had that was when he shared this. The point is simply that it was connected to the point of Donald Trump pushing the, I did want to show that actually. Let me see if I saved it real quick, and then we can wrap up. It's a post that simply shows the timing, which I do think is relevant, of when Donald Trump, let's see, when Donald Trump went to meet with a foreign country, and on the same day they roll out their biometric ID direction after he made a deal with them. So that's the point we're going to make with this ending clip. But just to show you one thing, if I can get there in time, how important this feels, the direction that it's going in. Let's see if it's down here at the bottom. Nope, it looks like I did lose it somehow. Oh well. Come on, there we go. Yep, no, well, we'll leave it with this. Now, just to reiterate, just in case you guys didn't get the point, is that so Donald Trump is meeting with people and using tariffs, which is one point that Derek makes that Greg Reese is going to highlight in the article he just put out, to coerce people into getting what they want in the direction of the Great Reset, aligning with the Sustainable Development Goals. There was one example of a different country that he went to meet with, and on the day he made that meeting and had a deal about supposedly separate things, after the meeting, they roll out the digital ID, everything we're talking about. So the question being posed by me, and that this video lays out, is whether or not Donald Trump is ushering this in, is coercing different people to go in line with this global takeover, coup, direction, coordination. You can decide for yourself. But I think it's quite obvious, as I said, that the Great Reset didn't end. It just carried on with a different flavor. And that was always the point. So I'll leave it there today. Thank you for joining today. And please keep calling this stuff out. Please just stay after this. You find important things, send it our way. Open source investigation. It's important, guys, because there's so many people fighting to suppress this information about anything we're talking about, any number of aspects. There's people trying to suppress content that makes their chosen person look bad. So if you support honest, independent, nonpartisan media, please show us what this meant to you. I love you all.
Yeah, and so The Last American Vagabond, I still can't get my video to play. I hope that at some point in the next few days I can. But I did post the original link to his Rumble channel. And so you can take a look there and support his channel because he has a lot of good work. Even Whitney Webb has mentioned him before as well. And so he does have good content. So anyways, on that note, I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.